Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook, Wizards of the Marvel Universe. Chapter 1. America, New York City, Manhattan. It's getting dark, and the lights are coming on. Snap, snap. Suddenly, a series of thunderous roars resounded in the sky. Not long after the thunder sounded, a blue lightning as thick as a bucket arrived as expected, and the entire night sky was dyed into a blue sea by the blue light of the lightning. Boom, boom. Lightning bolts darted in and out of the sea of thunder and cloud like a python. In a moment, a lightning bolt that crossed the sky from top to bottom. What's going on? Such an abnormality naturally could not be hidden from the people of Manhattan. In my entire life, when have I ever seen such terrifying thunder? Is this the end of the world? A faithful Christian knelt on the ground, silently took out a cross and prayed. Is Judgment Day coming? What they didn't know was that in this terrifying thunder vision, a black hole that penetrated the dimensional space had been quietly born in the Sea of Thunder. At the same time, a soul from a foreign country had crossed the void and shuttled directly into this Marvel world. It seemed that the way of heaven in this world could not accommodate this foreign soul. The thunder roared louder and the lightning became more violent. Even the soul of this wizard could not withstand the blow of the Sea of Thunder. Crack! Under the punishment of a whip of God, the entire soul was directly split apart, divided into 7 parts, and scattered all over the world. For ordinary souls, they would have been annihilated in thunder long ago. But at this time, a crystal with some red flames rose up, and the loud sound of a phoenix also broke out. A fire dragon could be vaguely seen in the sky. The big red bird, the dazzling fiery red tail feathers, and the perfect body all show the elegance of the king of birds. That's right, she is the Phoenix Fox. At the moment of danger, she used the flame of Nirvana to let her master escape the catastrophe. He was successfully brought to the mortal world. And her master, Yan Chen, is even more famous. In the Harry Potter world, he is known as the incarnation of Merlin. He can be said to be the number 1 in the wizarding world after Dumbledore. And his titles are enough to prove it. Recipient of the Order of Merlin, First Class. This super medal, which is usually awarded to the dead, was obtained by Lin Fan when he was 17 years old. Chief Magician of the Supreme Wizarding Court Wizengamot. Head of the International Confederation of Magic. He has been promoted many times and nominated as the Minister of Magic, but was often rejected by Yan Chen. In addition to these titles, his magical abilities are even more impeccable. He can be called the most amazing animagus in history. He can transform into various animals and even talk to them. At the same time, he is also a metamorphomagus, who can change into old people, children and women at will. These are the heights that wizards have been unable to reach since Merlin. In addition, he is a master of spells. In the Defense Against the Dark Arts class alone, he is still learning several new spells developed by Yan Chen. And he is an alchemist. Even the great Nicholas Flamel, inventor of the Philosopher's Stone, is inferior to him in his creations. He is also a dragon tamer, herbalist, potionist, and an outstanding fortune teller. Of course, he is also a magic zoologist, which has won the favor of Phoenix Fox. Such a nearly invincible character was unfortunately born in the timeline after the Dark Lord Voldemort. It also makes many wizards sigh that if he was born a few years earlier, Voldemort would have been eliminated long ago, and there would be no room for the existence of him, the Dark Lord. Such an invincible wizard, young and vigorous, began to explore the planes outside the world. Unexpectedly, he was accidentally involved in a high-dimensional plane. He even encountered a very terrifying space storm. Only the core of Yan Chen's soul remained, but with the help of Phoenix Fox, a certain qualitative change occurred. Although his soul was separated by thunder, he was not angry at all. Because before that, he had already cast a spell on these soul fragments. He successfully created his own Horcruxes and scattered them around the world. But this is not important now. His own soul has been summoned. It successfully parasitized on a Chinese child who had just been attacked and was on the verge of death. Interesting. This is death from magic damage. Yan Chen thought silently, gradually adapting to the strangeness of this body. At this time, because he was lying motionless on the street, he had attracted a blonde girl who had just come out of the auction. Oh my God, what's going on? A head of smooth golden hair and a delicate face like an angel soon appeared in front of Yan Chen. Suddenly, Yan Chen's eyes burst into ripples. Imperious curse. Take me away, ma'am. This is one of the 3 unforgivable curses. Anyone who is under it will obey the words of the caster. Because he has sensed that the danger has not dissipated, escaping the scene is the most important thing. After being cursed, the young girl named Susan immediately acted like the most devout believer. She carefully picked up the poor little boy, got on a luxury car, and disappeared from the street. Boss, what should I do? I was taken away by a woman. It's okay, just let them go. That kid is dead, Leo Jess said with a hideous smile. After all, how could he survive if his soul was directly annihilated by the magic blade? The guys around him, who were dressed in crimson wizard robes and hoods, laughed sinisterly. What a pity for such a good student learning magic. It is said that Master Ancient One has high hopes for his magical talent. A genius who cannot grow is ultimately a waste. What's more, it was he who accidentally saw the ceremony in which we communicated with the true god Dormammu to descend. Okay, let's go, Caecilios is still waiting for us. Leo Hayes swung his arm and put the hat behind him on his hair. A group of people walked from the street to the corner of the street, and as his wrist kept turning, a dazzling magical light suddenly bloomed in front of his eyes, and a space door was built. Soon, this group of people disappeared on the street. What's even more weird is that the vehicles and people passing by nearby turned a blind eye to these people, as if they no longer exist like air. 3 months later, in a luxurious and comfortable apartment in Manhattan, Susan held the phone in her hand, her curvy and tight figure perfectly sank into the sofa, her pretty eyes looking into the bedroom from time to time. Dad, I know, I've moved out for 3 months. I'm used to living alone. What? Move back home, please. Your daughter is an adult. Okay, that's it. I'll go back to see you during the holidays. After hanging up the phone, Susan took off her high heels with her slender hands. After putting on cool slippers on her smooth and white feet, she walked slowly to the door. In a bedroom of this duplex apartment, it was a completely different scene. Although the exterior decoration was modern aesthetic, this bedroom was full of the flavor of a medieval castle. Brick walls were even used inside, and the ornaments on display were all antiques. What's even more amazing is that there were even pieces of brown paper floating in the air. Suspended in the air, it completely violated the laws of gravity. A brain-boosting drug made from crushed scarab beetles, chopped ginger root, and armadillo bile. Narcissus root must be ground into powder. Fecal stone, taken from the stomach of sheep, has a strong detoxifying effect. A young and tender figure sat on the table, mumbling constantly. At the same time, a retro feather pen was not held by anyone, but was swinging on a piece of craft paper with the words. It seemed that the words of this young man contained infinite magic. And this young man was Yan Chen, who had just arrived here 3 months ago. As an expert in potion science, he was naturally full of endless curiosity about the outside world, so he recorded the newly discovered medicinal materials one by one. As he completed the record of a kind of intelligence-enhancing agent that can greatly improve people's intelligence. This piece of craft paper suddenly moved without wind, and like other craft papers, it naturally floated in the air. Yan Chen yawned and stretched his waist by the way. The new life is really too comfortable. Of course, it was also because of the need to restore his strength that he stayed at home for a long time. The wound 3 months ago was not worth mentioning at all. He only cast a spell of, recovering as before, to repair the wound on his flesh and blood. What's more troublesome is the wound on his soul. The moment he arrived, he was hit by a thunderbolt. Watching his soul shatter into pieces, Yan Chen suddenly had an idea and remembered the process of Voldemort making Horcruxes. One of the procedures was to split his soul and hide part of it in an object outside the body. So, Yan Chen recited the spell of the Horcrux without saying a word. These soul fragments were scattered outside and lived on treasures all over the world. In this way, he turned his disadvantage into a perfect advantage. Because the function of the Horcrux is that even if your body is attacked or destroyed, you will not die. Because there is still a part of the soul that is not damaged in the world. Voldemort achieved the so-called immortality through this. And now, Yan Chen himself has achieved immortality in disguise. But the problem is that he doesn't even know what the Horcrux looks like. If it is destroyed by someone, it will be a big deal. But through the connection of the soul, it is possible to check the existence of a soul fragment. Yan Chen, who had recovered 10% of his strength, was a little unpredictable, because he knew that the place was heavily guarded, and he also knew that this world must be very complicated and there were many strong people. But when he thought about the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. was guarding his Horcrux, why should he care? In fact, his strength was enough, and some changes had taken place. It was time to take revenge on the guys of 3 months. Boom. At this time, Susan pushed the door open from the hall. Susan opened the door. What caught her eye was a large piece of craft paper floating in the air. There was a faint scent of ink floating in the air. Of course, she had already gotten used to all this. After all, they had been living together for almost 3 months. Of course, this was beyond Yan Chen's imagination. He had cast a spell of soul stealing on her just to make her obey him and escape from the scene smoothly. Unexpectedly, this spell actually had the effect of solidifying the spell. So much so that it has been flowing in Susan's blood and heart, as if serving and obeying her was her duty. This probability is even lower than the probability of winning the lottery. It's the Phoenix Fox. Yan Chen thought about it in his heart and had guessed the reason. At the moment he came into the world, it was Fox who was reborn and saved himself. The strange thing is that in that catastrophe, her Phoenix energy actually underwent some kind of chemical change, and it has been imprinted in the depths of her soul ever since. Yan Chen himself also possessed a trace of the power of the Phoenix. Okay, Yan Chen, it's time to go out for dinner. Susan stood on tiptoe, stretched her arms, and tried to pull down the floating craft paper. Her plump and delicate figure was clearly revealed under the stretch. But even though she was as tall as a top model, it was a little difficult for her to reach that height. Return quickly. Yan Chen uttered a spell. An invisible wave spread in the air. The papers flew directly and steadily into the storage compartment. Okay, let's go eat. Yan Chen got down from his chair and said to Susan. He had already regarded this unexpected beautiful creation as his own property. Of course, Yan Chen himself also needed a woman who could take care of his daily life. Although he was a big shot in the magic world, although he had terrifying attainments in alchemy, potions, herbology, magical animals and other disciplines. Although he could shake his body and completely scatter countless villains, but he is undoubtedly a dwarves in action. There are no house elves in this world. This makes Yan Chen a little disappointed. But fortunately, there is Susan, a beautiful woman, who acts as a maid in life. Soon, the two came to the restaurant on the first floor. This 2-story duplex apartment was purchased by Susan in Manhattan to hide Yan Chen's identity as a wizard. Being able to live in Manhattan, where every inch of land is worth a lot of money, naturally shows the wealth of Susan's family. And Yan Chen, it doesn't matter if he is a gigolo. Of course, he also has some small contribution. For example, the invisible extension spell was used to transform this place. This spell increases the volume of the container, but the change cannot be seen from the outside. So, the 3rd floor of the apartment became a library data room. The 4th floor became a treasure room. The 5th floor became a monster breeding ground. And these expansions and changes to the floors, in the eyes of outsiders, are still an ordinary duplex apartment. Of course, these changes also cost a lot of money. Many from the money in Susan's purse. Susan bit off a piece of pork belly and muttered, "The money at home is not enough." Her eyes full of resentment seemed to blame Yan Chen for spending money recklessly. Yan Chen was also surprised. After all, in the mind of a wizard like him, money is really something outside of the body. So he should spend the woman's money without any concern, and he would not feel embarrassed at all. This is the problem of conflict of values. Yan Chen was slightly stunned, but he knew that he had spent a lot of Susan's money when buying medicinal materials for research experiments. That's not a problem, leave it to me. But, Susan said with some concern. After all, this little wizard was only a 15 or 16-year-old child. Don't worry. Looking at his bright eyes, I knew that my worries were unnecessary. Of course, it is better to be careful, there are many people like you in this world. Susan reminded. After all, there are many superheroes in the Marvel world, and of course, there are also many corresponding supercriminals. Yan Chen knew it in his heart and just nodded. After finishing the last bowl of rice, Yan Chen patted his body and felt extremely full. After eating and drinking, it's time for revenge. By the way, I'm going out tonight. Don't be too late. Okay. At this time, it was winter. Before going out, Susan helped Yan Chen put on a black cloak and fastened the silver buckle. The whole outfit was very similar to the dress of a wizard. After saying some pleasantries, Yan Chen's whole body was already walking on the street. A magic wand slowly stretched out from the loose sleeves. During his study career at Hogwarts, he graduated from Slytherin. This means that some people are going to be unlucky. On the deep and lonely streets, only the street lamps can provide a glimmer of light, which also dispels the cold winter wind and brings a little warmth to people. Coo! A bird's cry came from a lamp. An owl stood on the lamp, combing its black feathers. Seeing Yan Chen coming, its pupils flashed with a human-like look, and then it spread its two snow-white feather wings and flew into the vast night. This is the messenger that Yan Chen recently cultivated. Every student in Hogwarts basically has such a pet, acting as a messenger. Of course, Yan Chen's cultivation is not simple. In order to satisfy his purpose of revenge, this pet has the keen ability to capture the fluctuations of magic power. And with the help of spells, it can act as his own eyes and extend his vision. And now, this owl named Kelly has found the culprits. Then don't hold it mercilessly, Yan Chen said, as the wand in his hand burst into a ray of light. A chi-chi sound suddenly sounded, and his entire figure also dissipated from the spot. When he reappeared, he had already arrived in front of a church in New York. The distance of dozens of kilometers passed in an instant, and it took only a few seconds. Yan Chen's entire figure had reached the destination. As for the means used, it was naturally apparition. A very advanced magic. Every wizard must pass the assessment of the Department of Magical Transportation before they can use space magic. This is much faster than the speed of a flying broom. Of course, the soul space developed by Yan Chen has collapsed directly with the classification of souls. Unfortunately, the firebolt that accompanied him and won many Quidditch World Cups also dissipated in the space storm. Fortunately, his wand was safe and sound. As he slowly walked to the door of the church, two casual guards intercepted him at the door like loyal dogs. Wait, sir, this is not a place for a little brat like you to come. The rude words were full of meanness. The body as strong as a mountain gave people an incredible sense of pressure. Of course, Yan Chen was obviously not among them. As if he was not aware of the danger, he said, I'm here to find someone. Find someone. I think you should go find a doctor for help later. Seeing him walking slowly towards him, the burly black man smiled grimly, flexed his muscles, and stretched out his hand to wave at him. Just lie down on the ground. Before he finished speaking, the two men were directly pressed to the ground by an invisible resistance. It came out of nowhere, without a trace or form, so that the two strong men had no time to react. Is it you lying on the ground, or me? Yan Chen said disdainfully. Then he stepped directly on their bodies and came directly to the door of the church. Allaho, open. In this world, there is a spell that can unlock almost any locked door. This door that was locked with a big padlock opened automatically with the fluctuation of magic power. Clang. The two heavy doors made a dull sound. As the doors opened, the moonlight outside poured into the church inside, and a shadow was also imprinted in. Hey, what's going on? Holden, Billy, how could you two let someone in? The loud noise from the door also attracted the attention of the people inside, and soon two figures walked out of the room. Who are you? Looking at this guy who broke in unexpectedly, the two guys in crimson wizard robes immediately showed unfriendly faces. But when this figure gradually approached from the night, they could see the face of this person. It's you. No, aren't you dead? The two said in fear. As the ones who executed the young mage, seeing a dead person suddenly appear before their eyes was somewhat shocking. It seems I didn't find the wrong person. Yan Chen smiled. Just now, he was still planning to confirm whether he recognized the right person. Unexpectedly, they saved him a lot of trouble. Okay, you can go die. What? How shameless. The two felt the pressure in the air around them, and immediately raised their hands as if they were facing a great enemy. A magic blade suddenly appeared in their hands. But Yan Chen was faster. All petrified, the two people's faces turned purple in an instant, and they could not use any strength in their bodies, let alone move a little. Crack! The sharp blades in their hands also broke directly as the magic power was not supplied. Just then, a few white fibers floated in the air. An invisible magic wave immediately blew away the white fibers. God's blade has no shadow. Puff, puff. Invisible sharp blades ignored the distance and directly acted on their bodies. The bloodline burst directly. In just a moment, the whole body was covered with wounds and blood flowed all over the ground. Before they could take a breath, the two men died directly. The strange thing is that the petrification magic power still remained in their bodies, so that the two men were still standing when they died. And just now, for these magic spells, Yan Chen didn't even use the magic wand at all. Casting without a wand, a necessary technique for a high-level wizard. Although he only has one level of strength left now, Yan Chen knows that he is different. He is much stronger than before. Of course, this is because his soul has merged with the phoenix fox. According to legend, this phoenix has extraordinary magical abilities. Even after death, it can be reborn infinitely. Its tears are the supreme healing treasure. But now, not only has his own magical power been greatly improved, he alone has achieved a physique that is immune to fire and can spray out terrible fire damage. Not only that, Yan Chen also knows that he, the Animagus, has even unlocked a terrible achievement. A height that even the legendary wizard Merlin cannot reach. Thinking of this, at this time, Yan Chen has walked into the room at the back of the church. In the dim little room, thick candles were burning, providing the only lighting. Phoenix, seeing someone coming in, there was a confused shout from inside. Why is there only one other person? No, you are not Phoenix at all. With this exclamation, the deep shadow inside suddenly swayed under the light. Then who do you think I am? Yan Chen said. As he finished speaking, his figure suddenly walked from the shadows into the light. Impossible, how could it be you? No, are you not dead? The crowd over there gasped. They had never thought that a dead person would come back to life. So, did this guy kill them? Thinking of this possibility, everyone tensed up. A slightly strong smell of blood slowly drifted in from outside the house, causing their pupils to shrink slightly. A man with slightly bulging muscles stepped forward first. He showed a ferocious smile, looked at the man who was supposed to be dead in front of him and said, "Come to think of it, I killed you with one strike. Seeing you like this, I remembered how you were pierced by the magic blade, body." He was still explaining his words, but a dazzling green light was even more conspicuous in the dark environment. Along with it came a sentence from Yan Chen. Avada Kedavra. This spell was like a whisper from the underworld, reaching the ears of everyone present. It was also personally delivered into the body of the muscular man in front of him. Ah! A heart-wrenching cry of pain came out of his mouth. With such a painful cry, one can naturally imagine how much pain he has endured. As his pupils continued to shrink, his entire tall and strong body fell backwards, making a heavy sound on the ground. There was no wound on the surface of his body. He did not seem to be cut all over by the God of Swords. But this spell, as the first of the unforgivable curses, is far superior to many offensive magics. It can be said to be an instant death magic that directly hits the soul of others through flesh and blood. The cursed person dies immediately, and usually no trace is left. Only one person has survived in history. Even Dumbledore and Voldemort could only die under this magic. Not to mention this kind of minion character in front of him. After all, this extremely evil and cruel black magic, once used on a person, will result in life imprisonment in Azkaban wizard prison. Since you killed him, everyone took a breath. Although they all knew that the young wizard was a newcomer with great potential, what was the magic just now? He who kills others will be killed. You bunch of trash, come on. Let's review our learning experience in Kamaji Mahal. Yan Chen said lightly. After integrating the memories of the past owner of his body, he also roughly understood the magic system in this world. Different from his own world, which is more inclined to explore its own magic system. The magicians in this Marvel world draw energy from the vitality of heaven and earth, and then use external forces to cast spells. Swish, swish, swish. Gorgeous and dazzling magic sparks continued to bloom on the opposite side. Obviously, the magician group on the opposite side has successfully communicated with the outside world and absorbed magic power from it. Looking at the figures rushing over one by one, Yan Chen stood there calmly. In his mind, the words that the Supreme Mage Ancient One said to his past self rang out. We harvest energy, obtained from other spaces in the multiverse, chanting a spell. Forge shields and weapons. The pictures are so clear in my mind. Casting a spell. Thinking back to this, a dazzling golden magic circle appeared in Yan Chen's left and right hands. Then came two bright and thick sword blades. Isn't this very simple? Yan Chen said confidently. He succeeded in plasticizing it the first time. After all, his magic potential comparable to Merlin's was not exaggerated. The pupils of the people on the opposite side suddenly shrank. How fast has this person improved? Compared with the looming magic blades in their hands. The one in Yan Chen's hand has already solidified into substance, which is simply incomparable. Of course, the two magic systems are more different. The people here seem to prefer to use magic for close combat. It's really rough. Who are you? The second one. As soon as he finished speaking, Yan Chen pointed his toes and flew over like a sharp arrow. Swoosh! Yan Chen's sharp blade drew a trail, and suddenly a whimpering sound burst out. Puff! A line of blood spurted out. The wide-handled sharp blade directly pierced through the body of the person in front of him. So fast. Before this person died, he only saw a figure flashing past him. He was caught off guard and his throat was pierced by a sharp blade. HMPH, Yan Chen said softly. After a successful attack, he let go of the magic blade in his left hand. With a deflection of his body, he flew directly to the crowd in front of him like a nimble swallow. At the same time, a golden magic circle was generated in the palm of his left hand again, and the energy of heaven and earth was infused into it again. A magic blade was generated again. Yan Chen aimed at the target of attack, and with just one step, his body moved forward a few steps in an instant. His left and right hands just deflected. Puff, puff, two bloodlines burst out from the nearby figure again. Court death, die, but the two men obviously didn't hit the vital points. Because of the pain, they burst into blood and rushed over shouting. Swish! A dazzling silver light flashed by. Yan Chen's body once again was like a sharp arrow, suddenly crossing a distance of several meters and cutting through a person's head. Puff! Blood suddenly gushed out like a fountain. In the dark environment, the shadows sprayed into the air. Only the smell of blood made people know that this was blood. A human head fell from the sky and landed at someone's feet. The people in the room suddenly fell silent. The mage who had just been stabbed took a breath of cold air, looked at the head at his feet, and then looked at Yan Chen who was still standing there. His face was full of disbelief. Is this still a human? Such agile speed, such terrifying power, can a human summon it? It seems that my physique has really changed a lot. Yan Chen was also stunned, thinking silently in his heart. Just after he walked out of the door, he realized that under the influence of the phoenix, his physical fitness had become so strong. Compared with the body that was transformed by the dragon blood in the previous life, it is not much worse. The explosive power that can be controlled freely, the agility as nimble as a swallow, and the strong and powerful strength. It seems that the transformation of Phoenix to himself is not only at the magical level, but also has a significant increase in the personal physical level. I think it won't take long to break through the shackles of the human body. A sharp whistle suddenly broke the silent atmosphere between each other. Looking for death. The guy whose legs were shaking just now screamed hysterically, and rushed forward with a sharp knife in his hand. But before he took a few steps, a sound of blood blade scraping skin burst out again. The knife flashed, like a bright moon in this dark environment. When a figure passed by, another pool of blood splashed out. Ho ho! The guy who was just hysterical suddenly woke up as if from a dream, covering his injured neck and making a hoarse cry for help. However, his vocal tract had been damaged so long ago that he could not utter a single accurate syllable. He could not cover the wound on his neck, and it instantly stained a patch of his clothes red. It's still a little short. Yan Chen turned around and stabbed again. Swish! Another streak of blood flashed in the shadow. Just now, he didn't control his strength, so he didn't achieve the achievement of cutting off the head. But it's no wonder. After all, he is just a wizard. Although he is proficient in the knowledge of close combat, he is not as familiar with it as a spell. He shook off the blood on the magic blade in his hand. Sure enough, Close combat is bloodier after all. But a faint feeling of excitement also filled my heart. As expected, he was a student classified as Slytherin. Yan Chen complained in his heart. What are you still standing there for? Waiting to die and begging for mercy. Where did your courage to kill me go? 2 consecutive mockings. The remaining 4 people couldn't help but get angry. Don't fear, come together. 2 men in loose robes rushed up first. Unfortunately, the declaration of dying just now did not work. The other one stayed on the ground, his legs trembling, his pupils shrinking, obviously scared out of his wits. How could he have the courage to continue fighting this devil? This increased Yan Chen's efficiency in defeating them one by one. A sweep of the knife. Ding! The man in front of him actually caught up with the attack speed a little, holding the blade to block in front of him. But Yan Chen backhanded another knife. Puff! This time he failed to block it, and a bloodline that was cut in half splashed out. Ignoring the dying man, after kicking him away, Yan Chen turned around and slashed at the other man. Give! Puff! There was another sound of flesh being cut. Yan Chen won again with speed, leaving behind a corpse. Do not kill me. I want to betray them, I want to. Ancient Master exposes them. Seeing this bloodthirsty demon walking towards them, the 2 men cried out in grief. But what came towards them were 2 merciless blades. Puff! Puff! The noisy crying scene suddenly became quiet. Finally, it's quiet. Yan Chen calmed down the boiling blood in his body. After checking the time, he slowly walked out of the door. Suddenly, flames shot out from his sleeves like flexible fire snakes and rushed towards the entire church. Soon, the entire church, which was still under renovation, was engulfed in a sea of fire. Beep! Beep! The flames were like demons that were ready to devour people. Not only did they evaporate the blood on the ground, they also instantly swallowed up the corpses. The flames instantly ignited the flesh and blood, and the terrifying high temperature even burned the bones of the human body. Annihilated into ash, wisps of gray ashes floated in the air, and there was no trace of these people in the world anymore. Hiss! Under the violent and ruthless phoenix flames, a figure walked out of the burning church unharmed. Every time Yan Chen walked by, the flames would automatically make way as if they had a spirit, just like Moses parting the sea, full of visual impact. 1, 2, 6, 7. There is still one missing. As soon as he walked to the door of the church, Yan Chen thought of the results just now. There is still one guy left who fought with him at that time. Recalling the details of the past 3 months, he realized that a leader named Rios was missing. Rios, I really hope you can take one more blow from me. Yan Chen looked at the bright and handsome face in the flames, which was just like his face in his previous life. Perhaps it was just a container left for him by this world. In any case, it can be regarded as settling a grudge in his heart. Of course, the remaining people cannot be let go. At this time, a figure flew in from a high-altitude floor in the distance. Dressed in a red spider web, it was obviously our New York vigilante who fights against violence and protects the good Spider-Man. Hey, are you short on people for your Christmas bonfire party? How do you think I look like? Spider-Man Parker lived up to his reputation as a mouth cannon. He just finished speaking and made a few rather showy movements. But in fact, he was secretly surprised that this person could walk out of the flames safely. Is this another outlier? Looking at this familiar guy in front of him, Yan Chen did not feel annoyed or angry. He was just curious about his skill of flying in the air with the help of spider webs. Of course, it was just a little curiosity. Okay, you can go back now, Yan Chen said. Hearing the fire alarm coming from afar, he knew it was time to leave. Are you chasing people away? Wow, you are so cruel. How can I be missing from the bonfire party? Hey, buddy, come with me to the police station. As soon as the voice fell, swoosh, a spider web thread shot directly at him like a sharp arrow. The extremely tough spider silk thread even produced a whistling sound in the air. But when it was in the air, Yan Chen remained indifferent. Just looking at the silk web, a ghost fire seemed to dye his pupils red. The spider silk that was not in front of him suddenly ignited a flame. Not only did it block the attack, but it was also like a line of fire that spread directly upwards. Wow, Parker screamed and hurriedly pulled off the flames from his wrist. In his hurry, a dazzling red flame ignited directly on his back. Swish! A blazing flame came from the spider suit, and the flesh and blood even showed a slight burning sensation. Parker no longer cared about his image and kept rolling around on the ground. A small punishment. Yan Chen didn't look at this person anymore. If he didn't stop, I'm afraid this guy would have fallen into the sea of fire and died directly. Of course, this Spider-Man didn't interest him. After all, in his original world, there were monsters such as giants, centaurs, goblins, elves, phoenixes and dragons everywhere. Forget everything. Along with his faint words came a flash of white light. Spider-Man was hit by the spell before he could react. What happened just now in Yan Chen's existence were all wiped out in his mind. Just as Parker's eyes were blank, he felt confused looking at the burning fire in front of him. Yan Chen's figure had already walked away slowly from the door of the church. The magic wand in his hand emitted a faint light. Invisible waves spread out. Unfortunately, Parker was covered by the magic wave again. But the confusion on his face just now improved in an instant, and Parker couldn't help but wake up and said, "Oh, there was a gas explosion in my house. That's not right. It was Aunt May who asked me to go out and buy some soy sauce. I haven't bought any yet, so why am I still staying here?" This chatterbox finished talking to himself, as if he had turned a blind eye to the burning church and the wizard in front of him. His figure quickly disappeared from the door of the church. This is the charm of the Muggle repelling charm. This is an expulsion spell, and any Muggle referring to non-magical humans will remember the most urgent things and leave. In the past planes, Hogwarts was able to gain a foothold in the world, and naturally there was a set of magical measures that were not visible to mortals. Even humans who had witnessed the existence of dragons with their own eyes would be visited in person by people from the Ministry of Magic. This is also the reason why people don't know the whereabouts of wizards at all. After Yan Chen took a set of measures, he disappeared at the entrance of the street like a gust of wind. Hiss! The fire in the church that was still burning just now, but the fire was getting smaller and smaller in the blink of an eye. In just a few seconds, only small flames and a gray ruin were left. There was no trace of even the corpse. Spider-Man Parker returned to his home in Queens. He hurriedly packed his suit, picked up 2 bottles of soy sauce and opened the door. "Aunt May, I'm back from cooking," Parker said hurriedly. But Aunt May in the kitchen looked surprised and said, "Why did I tell you about this today? Wasn't it a few days ago?" Parker was instantly confused, not realizing that he had just been hit by the Muggle repelling charm. On the other side, Yan Chen raised his magic wand and used apparition to return home from the church. The distance of dozens of kilometers was reached in an instant. Once again, the magic of magic was demonstrated. Yan Chen stood on the top of the apartment building, the night wind blew, and the cold winter wind came. But it still did not calm the fire in his heart. After the massacre just now, the boiling fighting spirit in his body has not subsided, as if there is a flame burning in his heart. The faint burning sensation can't be suppressed. Even the pupils are flushed. Yan Chen couldn't bear the suppressed pain, but after realizing that this was the power of the phoenix, he fortunately let go of his body. Swish! Flames suddenly bloomed under the skin of his hands. But the suddenly relaxed defense was like a valve of a dam being suddenly opened. There was a loud bang. The flames suddenly rose into the air, swaying constantly under the night wind. Yan Chen looked at his hands that turned directly into flames, and was speechless. Is this elementalization? I didn't expect that after his soul merged with the Phoenix soul, he not only unlocked the flame immunity physique, but also gained an elemental ability after releasing the flame skill. This is no ordinary flame. The devouring ability of the Phoenix flame alone is enough to annihilate the human body into ashes. The few corpses just thrown away are the best examples. Yan Chen tried to clench his hands hard, and the gushing flames instantly changed according to his will, and gradually turned into flesh and blood. There was still a faint red light under the skin. But the strength is still a little lacking. Feeling the power coming from his palm, Yan Chen thought silently. Compared with the body transformed by dragon blood in the previous life, there is still a little difference, but the difficulty of solving this problem will not be too difficult. After all, there are still a few bottles of dragon blood enhancement potion left in the broken soul space. With his body transformed by the phoenix, it will definitely be strengthened again by this bottle of potion. It is even easier to exceed the flesh and blood strength of the previous life. Thinking of this, Yan Chen came down directly from the eaves. He didn't even say the spell of Allaho open. The door of this duplex apartment opened directly. As an old wizard's house, it naturally has extraordinary features. Not only that, in this building, it is also attached with all protection to defend against pure physical attacks. Of course, Safeguard can protect an area and defend against magic detection. In addition, there are naturally indispensable spells such as Thief Sensing Spell, Muggle Shielding and Expulsion spells. I'm back, Susan said excitedly. She walked in front of Yan Chen like a fluttering butterfly and took off his outer robes one by one. However, the specially reinforced cloak still had a hint of burnt smell after being ravaged by the flames. Brand new, Yan Chen silently chanted this spell in his heart. This is the skill of Silent Spell, which is similar to wandless spellcasting, and is also a necessary skill for high-level wizards. In an instant, the cloak that had wrinkles just now was smoothed out, and even the remaining smell of fireworks dissipated. This is the charm of wizards. Susan knelt down and took out a pair of slippers, revealing her plump and curvy figure, and the breathtaking curves showed her beauty. Yan Chen put on the slippers and went upstairs. Oh, don't forget, have you taken the last dose of medicine for today? Drink it. Due to the fact that it is rare to see a spell in a century, the Imperious Curse has been imprinted on Susan's soul like a brand. Therefore, Susan has become his own thing that obeys his words and deeds. However, this unforgivable curse is harmful after all, so it needs to be treated with medicine. This has eliminated some hidden diseases, but the loyalty and dedication to him has been perfectly preserved. After the two exchanged greetings, Yan Chen went to the 5th floor, the monster breeding house. This is a space floor created by the Traceless Extension spell, so the area is extremely vast, even wider than the 1st floor. However, this change, from the outside world, can't see any change. After feeding some monsters with food, Yan Chen came to the treasure house on the 4th floor and took away the dragon blood potion sealed in the bookcase. That's right, he plans to let his flesh and blood leave his mortal body tonight. The changes in the fusion of the soul made him think of a terrifying possibility. If what he expected is correct, then he will become the most shocking wizard of all time, no one. Thinking of this possibility, Yan Chen could not hold back his joy. He picked up several bottles of the remaining dragon blood potion to further transform the strength of his flesh and blood. In his previous life, he was a famous dragon tamer. Of course, behind this title, Yan Chen slaughtered almost dozens of dragon creatures. So rather than a dragon tamer, he was a dragon slayer. After this slaughter, Yan Chen not only harvested a large number of skin blood, hearts and tendons with magical functions, but also added 72 uses of dragon blood based on the 12 uses studied by Dumbledore. Among them, the most critical one is about how to use dragon blood to strengthen the human body. Yan Chen sighed lightly. Looking at the boiling blood-red medicine soup, he couldn't help but frown. The billowing red mist rose up, and a pungent smell of blood even drifted into the nose. This medicine soup that seemed like volcanic lava was really a bit uncomfortable. However, just this pool of water had almost used up all the rare medicines he had. It was time to go in. He no longer cared about the red bubbles floating on the water. Yan Chen took off all his clothes and submerged himself in it. Hiss! A slight burning pain instantly appeared on his skin. This was Yan Chen's opportunity. In the process of dragon blood transformation in his previous life, because of the need to take into account the body's tolerance, more than half of the medicinal properties were weakened. But now that he has achieved a flame-immune physique, the hot dragon blood soup has not weakened it at all, and he is ready for further strengthening and transformation. Well, a muffled cry came from his mouth. The scalding heat flowed directly through the skin, like a series of tiny pythons constantly drilling into the limbs and bones. The entire fair skin turned red in an instant, and even the face turned red, as if a terrible volcano was brewing under the skin. In contrast, the color of the entire blood-red medicine soup kept fading. Obviously, the entire medicinal power has been continuously absorbed by Yan Chen. As time passed, the blood water that was just like a vat of dark red was instantly bleached, and the red mist in the air gradually disappeared. The violent and restless dragon blood medicinal power was actually absorbed by Yan Chen alone. Gurgle gurgle. A burst of bubbles continued to swell on the water surface. In an instant, a naked person broke through the water surface. Yan Chen only felt that every breath he took was full of the taste of magma, and there was a faint blockage in his throat. It was as if a fish bone was stuck in his throat while eating. So, he tried to spit it out. Boom, but a scalding fireball spurted out like a long rainbow. Most of the water surface evaporated in an instant. Most of the wall in front of the bath collapsed directly. A flash of excitement flashed in Yan Chen's eyes. It's done. In his previous life, he only transformed the surface of the skin, but now it directly acts on the internal organs. The flame that spurted out of his mouth is the best proof. Obviously, his heart and other organs are full of magical functions. Now he is like a human-shaped self-propelled dragon. Boom! Yan Chen tried to get out of the pool, but he didn't expect to leave a footprint on the ground with one step. The power has skyrocketed to such an extent, so that he can't control the strength at all. It's really exciting and troubling. Restored to its original state. The thick marks on the ground and the wall destroyed by the fireball just now instantly began to return to their original perfect state in a way of time reversal. This magic spell involving time factors is almost the first spell learned by every new student. It can be said to be simple and practical. Apparition. Yan Chen returned to the bedroom on the second floor and fell headfirst on the cotton couch. Crack, but he had estimated his weight change in advance, and the four legs of the entire cotton couch broke directly, and he fell heavily to the ground with a loud noise. It's really too bad. This kind of uncontrollable change in the body really made Yan Chen a little embarrassed. He was too lazy to use spells to recover, and simply fell asleep. But at this time, he thought again of the phoenix soul in his soul and the dragon body in his flesh and blood. He is now a magical creature, free from the shackles of humans. Then he can use that trick. That was also a big regret of his previous life. Thinking of this, Yan Chen couldn't help but draw out his wand and silently recited the spell. Animagus refers to a wizard who can transform himself into an animal while retaining magic spells. Yan Chen is the most amazing animagus in history since Merlin. He can transform into various animals and talk to them. Just the transfiguration technique alone has crushed all wizards in ancient and modern times. But Yan Chen still has a problem. He can't transform into a magical creature at will. For example, the transformation of magical creatures, such as the Thestrals and unicorns, will bring unpredictable consequences. This may be because there is an essential difference in the operation of wizard magic and magical creature magic. But now it is not same. Now, after a transformation of his soul and flesh, he has escaped from this shackle. It can be said that he has far surpassed Merlin's existence. Yan Chen sighed, and his body suddenly swelled up like a balloon. The entire skeleton began to be transformed, and the limbs continued to extend. Sharp claws spread out of the two palms, and layers of delicate scales emerged from under the skin, tearing the outer clothes on his body. Roar! A violent beast roar suddenly erupted from Yan Chen's mouth. The little monsters in the fifth-floor monster breeding center also felt the movement, and huddled in their nests as if facing a great enemy. What is this? Susan in the living room also stood up from the sofa in an instant. Just now, she was shocked by the cruel kidnapping of Tony Stark by Middle Eastern terrorists from the TV program. But this roar of the beast directly caused a trace of pain and damage to her mind. This roar that hit her soul was like a crushing force on the life level, and it was extremely overbearing. What happened to him? Thinking that the sound came from Yan Chen's bedroom, Susan didn't care about the pain and ran upstairs and rushed in. With a click, the door was opened. But the scene in the room made her scream. A terrifying monster actually occupied the entire room. Two bronze horns emerged from its head and pierced through the ceiling. The row of shallow but razor-sharp ridges on its back were even more ferocious, and flashed a terrifying cold light under the light. The scales were smooth, but they flashed a terrifying aura. The swaying thick tail with sharp thorns made people feel cold. Yan Chen. This strange scene frightened Susan so much that she even wanted to run away. But thinking about Yan Chen's life, she trembled and endured the fear in her heart, and said tentatively. But in addition to the hurricane with a pair of wings flapping, there was also a hideous monster face in response. Dragon, Susan thought in surprise. But at this time, a bloody mouth suddenly stretched out towards her. Susan screamed and instinctively squatted down. Under the approaching heat wave, she couldn't move at all and could only squat on the wall. Was she going to die in his hands? Susan thought desperately. But as time passed, she didn't feel any pain. Roar. Instead, the dragon let out a beastly roar, full of pain that made people cry and complain. Susan couldn't help but open her tightly closed eyes. Looking at the copper bell-sized vertical pupil filled with pain, this strong human emotion made Susan more certain that this was Yan Chen's transformation. A pair of hands couldn't help but touch the smooth scales, trying to slowly soothe the irritable dragon. Slowly, the dragon, which was just irritable, slowly calmed down. Susan smiled and wiped it gently with her small hands. This gentle action was like a lover. A pair of fluttering huge wings finally shrugged and rested on the ground. At this time, Yan Chen's emotions gradually took over, gradually eliminating the uncontrollable animal nature. The transformation of magical creatures usually brings some unpredictable changes. This is a field that Merlin dare not touch. If you are not careful, you will really go crazy and lose your mind, and you will really become a dragon from then on. When Yan Chen tried to transform into a human form again, a more terrifying throbbing suddenly came from within the body. The emotions that had just calmed down suddenly fell into a frenzy again. Oops, I'm losing my mind again. Yan Chen knew that he couldn't stay here. If he continued like this, Susan might get hurt. He had a severe headache in his head. He was suddenly passively accepting all kinds of complicated information from the outside world. Within a wide range of 100 meters, all kinds of human voices kept coming into his mind, the sound of rats crawling in the underground tunnel, and the sound of high-altitude planes cutting through the air in the distance. How much did your daughter score in the exam? This is a neighbor's. Tony Stark is imprisoned in Afghanistan in the Middle East, and his life or death is still unknown. This is the sound coming from my TV. Snap. Snap. Paw. This was coming from a nearby hotel. This time, the ability was out of control. He couldn't turn off the voice in his head. Yan Chen's head hurt so much that he just wanted to stay in a deserted place to recuperate. Thinking about the address from the TV in the living room, he broke free from Susan's arms without hesitation and disappeared directly from the spot. This is Animagus. Every transformed creature retains the original wizard ability. Boom. Boom. In the sky above a certain country in the Middle East, there was a sonic boom. In the night sky, a huge beast appeared out of thin air. In the desert, a huge and irregular shadow passed by quickly. Wherever it went, it caused some small animals to tremble. The little guys who came out to hunt at night suddenly drilled into the sand. Of course, many merchants with camels witnessed it directly. What a great miracle that is. God is above. But these movements did not attract the attention of the dragon at all. It just took advantage of the night and quickly disappeared from the vast sight. Bang! Soon, the dragon that Yan Chen turned into folded its wings, and its body dived in a streamlined shape. Before landing, it spread its huge wings violently, leaving a shocking impact sound, but it could not control its speed and fell headfirst into the desert basin. Ha! A stream of hot air spurted out from his nose. Yan Chen's consciousness was half awake and half confused. He only knew that he needed some time to recover. The risks involved were inevitable. After all, there were only 7 registered animagus who could change everything in the entire 20th century. And changing into magical creatures was something that this small group of animagus dared not imagine. Not to mention dragons, phoenixes and the like, these magical creatures at the top of the food chain. Yan Chen's breathing gradually slowed down. His pupils as big as copper bells slowly closed, and he just lay on the ground and tried to recover his body. Peace of mind. Keep calm. Relax your mind and accept all the changes. Yan Chen's mind once again heard the words of the professor in the transfiguration class, who taught him carefully at that time. Between breathing, he calmed his mind and regained his mind. I'm a wizard from Hogwarts. I'm only 17 years old and I've already taken over the wizarding world. Yan Chen muttered. In this struggle with the beast, he couldn't let himself forget his identity. He had to remember who he was and not completely become a monster. After a period of rest, the wings that had been flapping gradually closed, and the thick tail also fell on the desert. The crystal scales began to slowly close, and the thick and strong muscles of the body began to shrink. Yan Chen succeeded. He could finally slowly master the trick. But at this moment, the roar of motor engines came from afar. One after another, very restless. In the night, countless bright lights swept in. Boss, I didn't see it wrong. The monster that was flying in the sky just now is about to land here. The roar just now almost made my heart jump out. Boss, do we have enough manpower? The subordinate who had just witnessed the miracle in the sky kept rubbing his hands and said flatteringly, "Oh my God, if he hadn't followed this ruffian, he would never come here." John showed a cruel smile and slapped the subordinate's face unscrupulously. "What? How did you become a coward? Where's your arrogance the last time you captured Tony Stark? Where's your courage to report your achievements to my boss?" Two sneering insults in a row. The subordinate who was notified endured the pain of being slapped on the face. He smiled and said, "I'm just worried about your safety, boss." "Am I kidding? The monster just now was almost 10 meters long. I'm afraid that just from the tendon meat alone." "Okay," John interrupted him and rolled up his sleeves. "You don't need to say more. I've already made preparations. Tony's missile weapon is in the convoy. No matter how tough the monster is, it will have to kneel down." Thinking of the Jericho missiles that destroyed the entire mountain, the subordinate named Bob immediately raised his thumb and praised the leader of his direct team. "The boss is indeed thoughtful." John ignored him and raised his arm directly. "Stop." The large number of vehicles that were advancing suddenly stopped at his call. John picked up the megaphone and shouted to the surroundings. The first convoy, carrying missiles, stayed where they were. The second team moved forward, trying to capture the unprecedented monster alive. After saying this, John put away the megaphone, raised the gun in his hand, and said to Bob, "Go ahead, you are also from the second team. Come show us the style of a hero who captured Tony alive." Bob wanted to refuse. What a joke. How could Tony compare with that monster whose voice could scare people? Looking at the gun in his hand, did he know that John wanted to use it to get rid of him? But he had no choice but to lead the second team straight up with a look of mourning on his face. "Humph, I'm going to kill you now," John thought viciously. This is the cruelest and truest side of the Middle East battlefield. Buzz. Pickup trucks loaded with people rushed to the place where the terrifying beast fell. The one driving forward was the second team ordered to attack. Bob swallowed his saliva and looked at the large group of vehicles with only dim lights a few miles away. He was immediately filled with anger and annoyance. What a fool. If he hadn't led the team to capture Tony directly, he would not have been suspected of being too powerful and ordered to go forward to detect mines. It's really bad luck. If I can go back, I must teach Tony a lesson. I might as well give him a chrysanthemum. Bob thought cruelly. Looking at the armed men fully loaded with bullets and the heavy machine guns mounted on the back of the pickup truck, he felt relieved. No matter what kind of monster you are, I don't believe that guns and ammunition can't kill you. After driving at full speed for more than 10 minutes, the vehicles in the front row stopped without permission. "Get out of here." Bob frowned and waved his hand, looking at the parked car in front with dissatisfaction and yelled, "What? Why did it stop? What are you doing?" I just had no place to vent my anger, and I couldn't hold back my anger anymore when I saw these cowards. "But boss," one of the men beside him said in a trembling voice, "just listen carefully." "What the hell is that sound?" Boom. There was an inexplicable thumping sound, pulsating along with the sound of the engine. As the noise of the crowd died down, the sound like a beating heart became clearer and clearer. It can't be the beating of a heart. Thinking that it was the beating sound of the monster in front of them, everyone couldn't help but tremble a little. What kind of monster could make such a strong and terrifying heart sound? "Keep going. That monster is just flesh and blood. We have guns and ammunition in our hands. You are not afraid of it," Bob said directly. Although he had already backed out in his heart, what a joke. If he went back, he would definitely be shot by John's grandson. Looking at the dark scene behind him, Bob gritted his teeth and charged directly. "Take it down. Don't hesitate." Boom, boom. The 4 pickup trucks immediately gathered their power and rushed directly to the source of the sound in front. But as the distance got closer, the pulsating sound of the heart became clearer and clearer, and it directly suppressed the sound of the engine, like a rumbling thunder that kept booming in the ears. Looking at the huge beast in front of him that looked like a small hill, Bob's pupils turned red and he shouted, "Shoot me. Da da da. Da da da. Quote. The vehicle stopped sideways, and the heavy machine gun at the back of the pickup truck suddenly sprayed like a line of fire, directly spraying at the huge black shadow in front. In addition, many assault teams riding small motorcycles continued to vent their firepower with rifles in their hands. Bang! Boom! Orange-red flames continued to bloom on the mountain-like beast. In a blink of an eye, a gray smoke that covered the sky and the sun was produced. The violent firepower also completely angered the dragon. Yan Chen just reminded himself who he was in an almost hypnotic way, trying to turn himself back into a human form, and his mind did not pay attention to the changes in the outside world. So he also paid attention to the surrounding hunting teams. When the firepower was vented on himself, the crackling of bullets on his body completely aroused the violent anger in his body, which made Yan Chen really unbearable. Roar! A roar of rage and fury erupted from the dragon. A stronger heartbeat sounded from its body. The people around it felt their hearts skip a beat and their hands stopped pressing the trigger for a moment. The dense scales that had just been trying to hide emerged again, and its body became even stronger and more sturdy. Under the stimulation of anger, it broke through the upper limit at the beginning, and its entire body stretched to more than 10 meters long. Roar! Yan Chen roared again. The circular sound waves spread to the surroundings of the desert, and directly turned into a substantial dragon power that pressed down on the crowd. Ah! Help! What is this? Their minds were immediately crushed by the pressure of this ancient beast, as if they were crushed by a hot torrent. The extremely oppressive soul pressure gave them a sense of suffocation. Many people with poor spiritual qualities were paralyzed and fell to the ground under the heart-wrenching screams. At the same time, the giant dragon that Yan Chen transformed into moved, breaking through the smoke that filled his body and passing through the flames. The sound of the bullets and the damage from the flames just now did not hurt him at all. As the giant dragon flew in front of him from the cover of the night, the group of terrorists also saw its true face. The huge inverted triangle scaly wings, the large smooth and dense scales, the thick and strong body, and the thick tail with barbs. They couldn't help but take a breath of cold air. But what they feared more was that the golden vertical pupil exuded a coldness. And then, it suddenly opened its huge mouth. An orange-red light was brewing in the bloody mouth. Die! Boom! The orange-red light brewing in the dragon's mouth turned into a terrifying jet of flame, pouring down on the people in front of it. As its head swayed, the flames fanned out and sprayed directly on them. The night was suddenly filled with flames, as gorgeous as a sunset glow. Behind this beauty, countless lives were being slaughtered. Ah! Help! Quote. Heart-wrenching cries of pain continued to be heard. Just the pressure on their souls was enough to make them feel swelled, and now, this kind of torment on their flesh and blood made them feel even more miserable. There was no time to react at all, and the flames sprayed directly on everyone. The whole person was like a torch, instantly lit. Even more tragic was that those guys who were directly hit by the flames turned into blood mist under the giant dragon's flame spray, and no bones were left. The terrible dragon fire began to ravage this desert land. Quick, fight back! Why are you still standing there? If you don't want to die, do it now. Bob, who was standing at the back, was still dumbfounded, but when he saw the raging fire in front of him, he came to his senses and began to command his men to organize a counterattack. But the boss, is this something we can resist? However, the impact that killed half of the men in an instant still made some of them feel timid. Although they were all desperate criminals who lived on the edge of a knife. Have you ever encountered such an indestructible dragon? Is this something humans can defeat? No. Claw attack. Yan Chen used one claw to crush their bodies into bloody mud, teaching them a good lesson with his actions. Tail sweep. The thick long tail raised a cloud of dust in the desert, carrying an unmatched energy, and directly hit the three people who were stunned nearby. With a crisp bang, the bones of the three people were instantly broken during the collision, just like being hit by a slow-running sports car, and they were directly knocked more than 20 meters away. In the process of being thrown, blood was scattered all over the yellow sand, dyeing a large area of sand red. Roar! Yan Chen roared, and rushed into the crowd recklessly, venting his anger. Wing attack. The inverted triangle wings suddenly opened, and the muscular muscles instantly crushed them into mud again. Bite. Grab. All the physical moves that a giant dragon should have were used by Yan Chen like a fish in water. Like a lion at the top of the food chain suddenly rushing into a flock of sheep, Yan Chen did not waste much energy at all. With only his thick flesh and blood, he trampled on them recklessly. Da da da. The sporadic gunfire of resistance just now has become increasingly restrained. Yan Chen looked at the people who were still resisting in vain, and the coldness of his golden vertical pupils became even more fierce. Ding ding. The sound of bullets and gunshots continued to be emitted on its huge body. But ordinary bullets that can take a life cannot penetrate the dense scales, and at most only leave a shallow white mark. But these itching like mosquito bites angered Yan Chen. Roar. Dragon breath spewed out. A stream of molten flames spurted out of its mouth again, like a flaming bird, directly spraying at the vehicle in the distance. With a loud bang, it was the dragon's breath that directly ignited the vehicle's fuel tank, further fueling the flame's ferocity, and directly engulfing all the people in the vehicle. Ah, come and save me. Bob, who had a fierce face just now, was unfortunately caught in the fire breath and let out a terrifying cry of pain. In the whole sea of fire, a bunch of struggling figures emerged. It was like a scene of purgatory on earth. Yan Chen looked at the crowd in the distance who wanted to escape, but sneered. How could he let them go? There was no need to go forward in person, but he silently recited a series of cumbersome and complicated spells. God's blade is invisible. Buzz. The magic wave was like an invisible wave, spreading around the desert. Accompanying the wave was an invisible sharp blade. The figure who had run thousands of meters away staggered, and his body suddenly splashed like a fountain of blood, and then scattered into a pile of minced meat. It was not limited to him. Anyone within a radius of several thousand meters was directly cut into pieces by the invisible knife needle. Ah! There were continuous muffled groans from the distance, and then a figure collapsed and fell to the ground. In the blink of an eye, more than a dozen guys who ran away recklessly were killed. A spell, so powerful. Even Yan Chen did not expect that it would have such an outstanding magical effect. Then he realized that it was indeed a real dragon body, and it was not comparable to the human body after all. The damage alone had increased by more than 10 times. I am afraid that even Merlin in the last world would not be able to withstand the power of a single blow. Yan Chen clenched his giant claws hard, feeling the huge force that seemed to tear the world apart, but he thought that this dragon body was not recorded in his monster atlas. Could it be that the mutant dragon species was caused by the transformation of the flesh and soul of the body? I haven't figured it out carefully yet. Whoosh! The terrifying sound rang in the air. Missiles coming from the sky suddenly appeared in his eyes. 1 minute ago, John heard a burst of crying in the communication phone. His heart sank to the bottom. When the last words became a silence, he no longer hesitated. He looked at the distant horizon with a line of fire and said directly, "Go. All missile troops fire." But our people. Bang! John raised his right hand, and a thick puff of gunpowder came out of the muzzle. The subordinate who had questioned him was shot in the head and fell to the ground, unable to move. With the previous experience, and looking at his unquestionable eyes, the people around him dared not hesitate, and immediately stepped forward to operate the instruments, ready to aim at the target and start firing missiles. It's a good time to test Stark Enterprises' Jericho missile to see if it's really that powerful. Let me see if you, a giant dragon, can eat these missiles. John thought viciously. With his order, the Jericho missiles produced by Stark Enterprises shot straight into the sky like steel spears. Bang, bang, bang. With the help of the tail flame, the missiles cut through the sky, making a terrifying whistling sound, and then drew a deadly trajectory and flew towards the place where the fireworks gathered. Yan Chen raised his head and looked up into the sky. There seemed to be a burst of fireworks in his golden vertical pupils, bright and uncertain. At this time, the missile was already approaching. It traveled 1,000 miles in an instant, and the time it took to land was extremely fast. With a loud bang, the Jericho missile, which was enough to completely destroy the entire mountain, exploded directly near Yan Chen. It was like a thunderbolt in a clear sky, and a huge explosion sounded between heaven and earth. A huge mushroom cloud pierced the sky, as if it was holding up the world. The gray smoke was accompanied by terrifying fireworks, and it was extremely conspicuous and bright in the dark night. A terrible sandstorm was set off in the surrounding desert area, and the ground was constantly shaking. Even the missile launch site, which was very far away, where the first convoy stopped, felt this extremely terrifying vibration. Ha ha ha. Looking at the crowd that kept swaying around him, John was not angry but happy. This Jericho missile is really as effective as the legend says. It is a missile weapon that is only half inferior to a nuclear bomb. No wonder it is regarded as a flagship product by Stark Enterprises. Can't this bomb kill you, the giant beast? Well, I will severely punish Tony, the rich second generation, when I go back and make him build more of these missiles. John thought shrewdly. With this kind of weapon, won't he dominate the world? But at this time, a cry of surprise came from the crowd behind. Ah, what the hell is this thing? John woke up instantly, but he didn't pay attention to the screams, but suddenly found himself in a shadow. This is a huge and irregular shadow. If you look to both sides, you can see that the shadow suddenly rises on both sides, forming a shape that looks like wings. Is this a joke? He is not dead yet. John looked at the majestic figure in the sky. The drooping thick tail was intimidating. The huge chamfered wings flapped slightly, and the airflow kept making a rumbling sound from the surface of the wings. The huge body exuded a cold aura under the moonlight at night. And the most important thing is the pair of golden vertical pupils, which are filled with murderous intent that even the dumbest person can feel. Impossible, this monster. How could it not be dead? John said tremblingly. When he looked at the wounds that were slightly damaged and still bleeding, he said with joy, "Look. It's also a flesh and blood creature, it can get hurt too, attack me now. You good for nothings, attack me." The subordinates suddenly woke up from their dreams. Their instinct to obey their superiors overwhelmed their panic. They pulled the triggers one after another, and the muzzles of their guns instantly sprayed out sparks of flames. The smell of gunpowder from the bullets filled the air. Da da, da da da. The sound of gunfire suddenly increased. It was accompanied by their hysterical voices. After all, facing such a giant dragon, how could they afford to shoot if they were not crazy? Humph, stupid muggles. Along with the sound of gunfire, the roar of a giant beast slowly drifted in. People stopped what they were doing in an instant. Wait, can this giant dragon talk? But before they could turn around in surprise, an orange-red firework had already come from the sky, and a terrifying and raging flame snake suddenly filled the ground. Dragon breath spewing. This instinctive talent does not even require chanting spells, just a telepathic communication, it can be easily completed. Yan Chen was already completely angry, but he didn't expect that this group of criminals would hurt him completely. But it was just a temporary wound. When the missile exploded, the scales on his body instantly ruptured. But the blood flowing in his body also instantly boiled, and the surrounding injuries increased rapidly at a speed visible to the naked eye. This strange healing ability was even beyond his expectations. If I guessed correctly, this is the extraordinary self-healing of the ancestral dragon. The dragon blood potion was made by adjusting the blood of dozens of dragons. After a period of dilution, it was extremely weak. But I didn't expect that I actually stimulated one of the hidden bloods. Then, wouldn't it be possible to successfully stimulate the dozens of blood powers? Yan Chen couldn't help but think of this possibility. Maybe it can really stimulate the various weak dragon blood power in the body. Yan Chen couldn't help but think of this possibility. But looking at the terrorists running rampant below, he didn't intend to hold back. They angered him again and again. How could Yan Chen tolerate them? Not only that, looking at the gang logo tattooed on their hands, he wanted to eradicate this evil organization directly and punish these guys severely. The crisp sound of ding-ding, like rain hitting banana leaves, kept coming out on his body. It was the sound of the oncoming bullet. Quick, quick. Kill this monster for me. John kept urging his men to work harder and make the bullets more powerful. Suddenly, several rocket launchers whistled and missiles shot up. Boom, boom. Fireballs instantly bloomed on his huge body. But to the dragon body, these were just a slightly stronger oxygen. Gray smoke filled the air, making it a little difficult to see clearly. Only Yan Chen's pair of golden vertical pupils shone directly into their eyes through the heavy fog. Give it to me now. John, who was giving orders just now, stopped abruptly. Looking at the pair of inhuman eyes, he felt a chill in his spine. What a terrifying momentum. Even the boss he met in person, Mandarin, did not have such momentum. At this time, a roar directly tore through the smoke in front of him. The huge body appeared in everyone's eyes again. The dragon has reverse scales. Touch it and you will die. After having a general understanding of his own physical strength, Yan Chen folded his wings, hugged his body, and instantly dived down in a streamlined posture. The terrifying airflow continued to spread from the air, instantly overturning this group of poor little guys. With a crisp sound, at the moment before landing, Yan Chen's huge wings suddenly opened, and the falling momentum of his body instantly folded, making the impact of the air make a terrible crisp sound. Then came. It was a ruthless and fatal blow. Sweep the tail. The thick tail was wrapped in a sonic boom, and it directly crashed into the surrounding people in a fan-shaped amplitude. Although Yan Chen is only a young dragon now, he is a giant dragon with a body of nearly 10 meters. What a majestic behemoth. Just a sweep of his tail can directly crash and kill people within a radius of several meters. The crowd in the distance was even more affected. The terrible sound whistled like a storm, knocking them to the ground mercilessly. Dragon's breath. The orange-red flame bloomed again, and Yan Chen spewed it directly into the dense crowd. With a loud bang, along with the explosion of the gasoline tank, the whole group of people who wanted to fight back together suddenly exploded under the impact of the flames. Bang, bang, a fierce step down. The pickup truck blocking the road was immediately crushed into thin scrap metal, and blood continued to seep out from the gaps in it. Da da da. Sporadic resistance was heard again. Many people held their guns in fear, trying to stop the monster. But this was just a luxury for them. Thunder explosion. Yan Chen chanted the spell again, but the magic cast from the dragon was more than 10 times the power. Perhaps this is dragon language magic. This spell can make something explode instantly. But with the blessing of dragon language, all the objects around exploded one after another like fireworks. Pickup trucks, motorcycles, and large trailers towing missiles also exploded instantly under this spell. Boom! The sound of explosions continued to ring. This chain explosion also affected the people nearby, leaving behind corpses burning in the flames. And those guys who drove away on small motorcycles were not much better. After the spell took effect, the motorcycle below exploded directly, and the terrifying shock wave also blew them into the sky in an instant. In a blink of an eye, they were almost wiped out. Zhang looked at these bleak scenes, thinking that his lifelong foundation was completely destroyed, and he didn't know how to explain to the Mandarin, and he couldn't help but let out a heart-wrenching cry. "You fool, I'm going to kill you." Snort. "Do you think you can live until now because you are extraordinary? You are just a chess piece that I need to use." The dragon body once again shocked the world with words. Yan Chen has gradually mastered this body and directly launched the spell of Resoul Reading on him. Resoul Reading. The ability to obtain emotions and memories from a person's mind. Soon, John's eyes were dazed, and the memories in his head were constantly read by Yan Chen. It only took a few seconds. The entire base in the Middle East was exposed. Of course, there was an unexpected gain. This base was also where Tony Stark was imprisoned. Perfect. Just when I am short of money. Boom. A huge figure suddenly appeared in the night sky. The terrifying whistling sound and whirlwind came from the 2 large wings of the dragon shadow. The desert on the ground around seemed to have encountered a sandstorm. It began to roll up gusts of whirlwinds, and the sand and rocks flew everywhere. The wind and sand continued to fill the air and made a rustling sound. Such a strange phenomenon in the world immediately attracted everyone's attention. The secret sentries outside the base kept sounding the alarm, looking at the giant beast in the sky with a look of shock. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! God, it's a terrifying monster! Quote. Under the urging shouts, the people in the base suddenly woke up as if from a dream, picked up their guns and started running out. But when they saw the huge shadow hovering in the air, they were stunned in place, and the guns in their hands fell directly to the ground. Oh my God, what the hell is this? Is this the guy John and the others are looking for? But, where are they? Why haven't they come back? Boss, we can't get any news from John and the others. No one replied. Confused shouts kept coming out of their mouths. Just as they were ready to raise their guns and aim at the giant beast in the sky. Yan Chen looked down with his golden vertical pupils and said slowly, "No need to wait, they are already dead." What? This? Several shocked shouts were heard from the ground. What shocked them more than what he said was that this terrifying dragon could actually speak. What was going on? Was the monster a spirit? And now, you can die too. Before they could come to their senses, Yan Chen announced the death penalty to them. God's blade has no shadow. When he saw that almost all the figures were coming out, Yan Chen directly released this terrifying move. This was originally a spell for single casting, but with the blessing of his body, it became a large-scale killing move. Invisible ripples filled the air, presenting in the form of waves, and quickly spread outward. Buzz, buzz. When the invisible ripples touched the human body, they produced a trace of substantial waves. But at that time, it was the time for the most ruthless slaughter. Puff, puff. The sound of cutting flesh and blood continued to be heard, and lines of blood instantly spread over their bodies. The invisible blade was very sharp, and each wound was extremely smooth. The originally noisy scene suddenly became very quiet, as if the human voice just now was just an illusion. Fall down, Yan Chen said calmly. The two huge scaly wings flapped slightly, turning into a whirlwind that blew across the entire desert. A trace of blood immediately sprayed out from each blood line. When the storm blew down, the entire body that was originally intact instantly became like a building block, scattered on the ground. This is your fate, Yan Chen said calmly. It seemed that the entire Ten Commandments gang was just a small organization to him. But in fact, it was true. After such a massacre, the entire yellow sand flowed into rivers of blood, and the scabs turned into red soil. Yan Chen could feel that there were still many people in the base, and Tony Stark happened to be imprisoned here. So he did not hesitate. He rushed down directly. He slowly chanted a spell in his mouth. In the cave of the entire base, Tony Stark was imprisoned here, preparing to build the Jericho missile for the terrorist organization Ten Commandments. But secretly, he was secretly building the Iron Man suit in order to escape. Fortunately, those bumpkins don't understand at all. Just as Tony muttered, the whole cave kept shaking. It was as if it encountered a terrible sandstorm. But he was not angry but happy, because Tony had heard the crying and shouting outside. Obviously, someone came to rescue him. Was it his best friend Colonel Rhodes? Or someone called by Pepper? Or a rescue team sent by the military? No matter what, Tony only knew that he was about to be reborn. See, this is my network strength. Old buddy, you also benefited from it, Tony said with a smile to Ethan, who was also imprisoned beside him. You are indeed a big shot. It seems that I can escape from here thanks to you, Ethan said gratefully. As the vibration that had just subsided rose again, after a thunderous roar, the iron door in the cave was smashed directly. Wow, party, beautiful ladies. Tony Stark, I'm back again, Tony said excitedly, but a thunderous voice followed. Oh, it's you. Very good, Tony Stark, you've been kidnapped. After smashing through the ceiling, a huge head stretched out. The two towering horns pointed straight to the sky like sharp arrows. But looking at this terrifying beast, and listening to his joking words, Tony was immediately frightened and collapsed to the ground, saying, God. What's going on? Ethan, who was standing by, was also frightened and huddled in a corner. He said to him unhappily, is this your man? A legendary dragon. A dragon that can talk. Oh my God. Tony was stunned, shocked by this powerful sight. Look at the golden pupils that seemed to be burning with fireworks, the green horns pointing to the sky, the huge muscles that were constantly throbbing, and the scales that glowed coldly under the lights. Oh my God. Hey, this dragon brother. I don't think I called you. Tony was paralyzed on the ground, swallowed his saliva, and then organized his words from his mind and said slowly. Oh my God, is this not a joke at the Halloween party? Or is the show crew coming to play a trick on him? Tony was confused, but said in a trance. And what did you just say? Come to kidnap me? Ethan, who was huddled in the corner, nodded and said in agreement, Tony, you heard it right, I also heard his kidnapping declaration. Ah, such an exaggerated reaction. It was as if a muggle suddenly collided with a wizard casting magic. Yan Chen was no longer surprised by this. He ignored the exaggerated reactions of the two muggles and continued to say calmly, yes, Tony Stark, you have been kidnapped. Tony heard this repeated sentence very clearly. They really wanted to kidnap him. He just walked out of the cage of the Ten Commandments gang, and now he was going to be captured by this dragon. This is simply a tragedy on Earth. Tony murmured, this is just a dream. Now please let me wake up from my dream. After that, he closed his eyes and pinched his arm heavily with his hands. Oh, there was a sharp pain in his arm, and he couldn't help but let out a cry. Then Tony couldn't wait to open his eyes, but what he saw was still the pair of golden pupils with uncertain light and the huge head sticking out. Finished, Tony said in despair. This was not a joke. As for whether it is finished or not, it depends on you. Well, it's time to discuss the ransom. Of course, you can also think of it as a life-saving money. After all, it can be regarded as saving you from the 10 Commandments gang. Yan Chen said lightly. Tony didn't expect that he could escape successfully. But what this guy said was right. He could be called a ransom to express his gratitude for saving his life. Then how much do you want? I don't need much money from you, just $2 billion. Yan Chen, a wizard, didn't have much idea about the money circulating among muggles. Thinking about how he spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on Susan, he just set a number on that basis. This number was definitely a sky-high ransom. Even with Stark Enterprises, which had a high market value, it was still a considerable sum for Tony. I'm afraid that if I want to raise this amount of cash, I need to cash out Obadiah shares. Tony sighed. Then he said, okay, I promise you. Very good, Tony Stark. Let's discuss the ransom for the other person. What? Tony was so scared that he collapsed to the ground again. It couldn't be another huge amount of money, it would simply cost him his life. Ethan didn't expect that he would be asked for a ransom, so he said to Tony, don't worry about me. Are you kidding me? Tony shook his head. During the days when they were imprisoned, he had been able to get rid of a lot of his vanity and even recognize the friends around him who only cared about food and drink. So he really had a lot of respect and friendship for Ethan. It can be said that without him, he would have died in the wilderness a long time ago. Name your price, Tony said with a slightly gloomy look, ready to bleed heavily. But Yan Chen just said, very good, I witnessed a flawless friendship. I just need a channel to purchase materials. I will entrust you to purchase some materials from all over the world in the future. Of course, I will pay the price. After all, there seems to be no Ministry of Magic, Gringotts, Diagon Alley and other stores for purchasing magic materials in this world. So Yan Chen needs an influential person to help him purchase materials from all over the world. In particular, as small as daisy roots, fig peels, caterpillars, a small drop of leech juice, and mouse spleens needed to make shrinking potions. These materials can't be made by a wizard himself. So Tony Stark was chosen as his purchasing merchant. Is that all? Tony, who had just prepared for a big loss, didn't expect it to be such a simple request. To be honest, asking Stark Enterprises, a world-renowned company, to purchase raw materials is a small matter, isn't it? But I really don't know what this guy needs. Tony wanted to say more. But Yan Chen was ready to leave, and his golden vertical pupil glanced slightly. The spell of oblivion suddenly took effect on Ethan. Very good, I will come find you. I hope you have money ready by then. Yan Chen's dragon body had quickly disappeared from the cave in an instant. Before Tony could be shocked, what surprised him even more was that the damaged buildings around him began to recover automatically, and the corpses in the distance turned into layers of smoke and began to dissipate. It was as if what had just happened was just an illusion and no longer existed. It's simply a miracle. Tony was speechless as he looked at the miracle before his eyes. The entire base cave, which was originally in tatters, seemed to have gone back in time and restored to its original state, while the corpses in the distance all turned into dust and dissipated in the air. It was as if everything that had just happened no longer existed. What was going on? Tony glanced at Ethan and said, Ethan, did you see that? Tell me this is God's creation. But Ethan looked at him with a confused look on his face. By the way, Tony, what are you talking about? What Tony didn't expect was that this guy had forgotten everything. Thinking of the sight from the huge dragon head just now, he couldn't help but think that maybe his memory had been deleted. Let's go. If it weren't for your Iron Man armor, we would have been dead. Tony was speechless. He hadn't even put on the armor yet. Obviously, this guy's memory had been tampered with, turning himself into a great hero. What kind of monster is this? It can restore all broken things to their original state. It can also modify a person's memory. Thinking that I have to deal with this guy again, I can't help but feel a headache. Well, it's time for us to go home. Tony put on the first-generation Mark mecha and said directly to Ethan. In the dark sky at night, the night was so dark that you couldn't see your hand in front of you. Boom! A violent sonic boom was heard. It was like the sound of a Raptor fighter jet running at full speed, but the guy who created the sound barrier in front of him was not made of steel, but a living flesh and blood creature. A large irregular black shadow kept shuttling through the white clouds. Two wide and ferocious sharp horns protruded from the clouds, and the broad and chamfered giant wings flapped slightly. Bursts of wind whistles erupted from it. Driven by the huge scaly wings, the entire huge black shadow was 100 miles in an instant, and the speed was extremely exaggerated. I'm afraid that even the fourth-generation fighter jets can only eat its smoke and dust. Before the dragon could get out of the clouds again, the entire huge figure suddenly shrank and disappeared, turning into a human figure that suddenly flew out of the white clouds. Ha! Yan Chen exhaled heavily. He cast 2 spells in a row. Flying feather spell, ideographic comma, the levitation spell, allowed him to stay in the air with ease. He had finally succeeded in freeing himself from the transformation into a dragon body, which was not an easy task. The reason why there are only a few animagus in a century is not only because of the wizard's talent, but also because it tests the wizard's mental cultivation. After successfully transforming into the desired animal, one must not lose his mind, otherwise he may become a real animal. Second, he must keep his mentality balanced, which is the key to transforming into a human again. The principle is simple, but the operation is very complicated. For example, Yan Chen himself almost couldn't get rid of the dragon's violent nature and completely lost his mind. But fortunately, after Yan Chen vented his anger on the poor Ten Commandments gang, his whole mentality gradually stabilized, so that he successfully freed himself from the dragon body. Overall, it's not bad. Yan Chen clenched his right hand, feeling the force, but he knew that his body had changed again. With a thought, a scratch appeared on the back of his right hand. Puff! A line of blood emerged. But before the blood could spurt out in a large area, the entire wound was instantly sutured, and it was restored to its original state at a speed visible to the naked eye. The speed was even more amazing. My body has inherited the extraordinary self-healing ability of the ancestral dragon. Yan Chen smiled. Animagus is interconnected. After all, the dragon body is me, and I am also a dragon body. All the blood stimulated by the dragon body will flow into my body. This is quite interesting. I still have dozens of bloodlines that have not been stimulated. Slightly suppressing these joyful thoughts, Yan Chen looked at the light in the distance and knew that it was time for him to go home. Crackle, crackle, it was like the sound of burning wood. It was the sound of the successful apparition spell. Then, Yan Chen's figure instantly returned to Manhattan. Dawn gradually rose. In Manhattan, in front of a duplex villa. A slightly delicate and slender figure was sitting on the stairs of the duplex apartment, with his hands supporting his chin and nodding silently. His face was full of longing and a painful look. Yan Chen, who was standing by, was a little stunned when he saw this scene. He was a little moved. He sighed and came to her. Are you okay? Susan's figure was like a swallow flying into the forest, and she threw herself directly into Yan Chen's arms. She kept crying and complaining, "Are you okay?" Yan Chen patted her shoulder and said comfortingly, "It's okay. Let's go back to the house." Having just undergone the dragon blood transformation, and then transformed into a divine dragon, Yan Chen had been tossing around all night. This made Yan Chen a little slack in spirit, and in order to adapt to the body after the sudden increase in strength, necessary sleep was indispensable. Susan, who was tired and worried all night, also fell into a deep sleep. This sleep, it was from the dawn to the evening. Looking at the gradually foggy night scene outside, the two couldn't help but smile at each other in the living room. Ever since Dubai came up today, the relationship between the two has inexplicably taken another big step forward, as if there was an inexplicable concern in each other's hearts. Come, open your mouth. Yan Chen, a famous wizard, felt uncomfortable for a while, but he enjoyed this kind of service with peace of mind. With a cry of, "Ah," he swallowed the food Susan handed over in one gulp. The reason why he was feeding like a baby was that Yan Chen had not yet fully adapted to his own strength. The 3 severely twisted and broken silver chopsticks and soup spoons on the table were the best example. Not to mention the chopsticks that required some skills, even the soup spoon that a child could hold steadily was completely shattered by Yan Chen's slight pinch. "You're so obedient." Susan watched him swallow it all in one gulp, and she showed a sweet smile of satisfaction. However, when she looked back at the few empty boxes left on the table and the plates without much food, Susan said with a sad face, "But the disobedient thing is, how come you eat so much?" Suddenly, after one day, not only did his strength become so great, but his appetite also became so great. "I really don't know what's inside your stomach." This complaint made Yan Chen's face turn red for no reason. What he didn't expect was that after the body transformation, his appetite increased in direct proportion to his strength. The food in front of him was just enough to fill his stomach slightly. "I might still need some food." What? Looking at his extremely serious expression, without any falsehood, Susan couldn't help but feel a headache. Is there a dimensional space in this guy's stomach? Okay, I'll order you a takeaway. Let you eat as much as you want. Yan Chen nodded, but thinking of his current appetite, it would probably take a lot of time to eat some food. This is a bit embarrassing. But it doesn't matter. As an expert in both herbology and potions, Yan Chen knows a lot of formula diets to fill the stomach. They are prescriptions specially created to satisfy the needs of dragons and giants. Among them, there seems to be a medicine called senzu bean, which can not only satisfy people's appetite but also heal injuries. But what I didn't expect was that one day I would need to eat food specially fed to dragons. The taste should not be very good, so it seems that I need to adjust it myself. At this time, the TV screen suddenly interrupted with breaking news. A beautiful announcer said, "Tony Stark, chairman of Stark Enterprises, returned to his home in New York at around 4 o'clock today. It has been 2 months since he disappeared." The real reason why they were able to miraculously escape from the 10 Commandments gang this time is unknown. It is reported that Tony declined any interviews. Quote. There is no doubt that Tony's return has completely set off the entire social media. So much so that the news about Tony Stark is everywhere. As the instigator, Yan Chen calmly watched the TV screen, but he was preparing to visit Tony in person a week later to recover the money he promised. He also planned to use his company's channels to recover various materials in the world. It seems like a little unexpected gain. Yan Chen frowned, but smiled silently and immersed himself in the food. At the same time, in front of the church that had completely fallen into ruins, a man in a red wizard robe stood there, looking at the scene with a sinister look on his face. "Who is trying to anger Dormammu's followers? Don't let me know who you are, or I will make you die beautifully." As soon as he finished speaking, the lamps on both sides of the surrounding streets suddenly made a click and broke. The whole street fell into darkness. His entire figure disappeared. Only a snow-white owl stood on a lamp, slowly combing its feathers, watching everything. Night fell. In a small house located on a reef, the sea breeze from the shore kept blowing in, and the whole house was dark and cold. A figure wearing a crimson robe sat in front of the fireplace in the house. He looked at the flames in the fireplace and said to himself, "Master, a large number of our believers died in the Tarsum church. What's even more abominable is that I can't find the murderer behind this. Could it be that the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One did it?" After saying these words, the figure in front of the fireplace fell silent, as if waiting for an echo. Suddenly, the flames in the fireplace suddenly surged, and a face appeared in the flames. A faint voice came from the fire. "Leo Jess, my most beloved disciple, this couldn't have been done by the Ancient One. Because if it was her, she wouldn't have been so heavy-handed. I understand her very well." Leo Jess had no doubt about what he said. After all, Caecilios was once the most anticipated young disciple of the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One, but that was only the past history. Today, Caecilios is a follower of Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension. He is also the leader of this group of Dormammu followers. And their only mission is to guide the power of Dormammu to the whole world. While they were still talking, a figure came to the house by the sea. Crack, crack. The sound of the apparition spell rang out again, and Yan Chen arrived at the small house by the reef accurately. It's a good place to hide in secret. Yan Chen looked at the deep sea outside the coast and sighed. The sound of waves continued, hitting the rocks and rolling up thousands of waves. At this time, a sound of flapping wings kept calling. The owl messenger Kelly fluttered over and landed steadily on Yan Chen's arm. The fluffy head feathers kept arching Yan Chen, as if asking for credit and showing love. Okay, I get it, Kelly, you've done a great job. Yan Chen said. He can communicate with all animals, even the parcel tongue that Voldemort used to communicate with snakes, or even small ants and caterpillars, he can use it easily and without hindrance. Coo, coo, coo. Kelly chattered for a while. He wanted to go home and rest. Yan Chen smiled after hearing this. During this period of time, he asked it to find the murderers who killed his predecessor and find his own Horcrux. It was indeed a bit troublesome for it. Okay, I'll go home and get you something delicious. Now I should meet my old friends there. A gust of sea breeze blew slowly. Yan Chen's figure also disappeared. The enemy is coming. A warning sound came from the flame in front of the fireplace. Leo Jess inside the house was startled and looked at the hut vigilantly. Suddenly, a strong wind blew up in the whole house, and the roaring wind even blew the robes up. The small candles in the house suddenly went out. The flame caused by the firewood in front of the fireplace was suppressed all of a sudden. How dare that scoundrel be so rude and bold? The ferocious face that emerged from the flames kept twisting and struggling, hoping not to be extinguished in the storm. It's me, a faint voice echoed in the room. Along with this, the struggling flames in the fireplace were also extinguished by force. It's you. How is it possible? Looking at the figure that suddenly appeared in front of me, I could see this face very clearly under the moonlight. It was obviously a dead man's face. Impossible. The day you accidentally witnessed our evil ritual, you were eradicated by us. Moreover, I gave the direct order to kill him. How can it be? It's you. Leo Jess said in confusion. A ferocious look appeared on his face, and 2 dazzling magic circles appeared from his hands. It is me. I have to thank you for what you said. Yan Chen said calmly. But at this time, how could Riohei not understand why he came? It was obviously for revenge. It happened in a flash. Whoosh, whoosh. 2 magic whips made of magic elements broke through the air from his hands. Bang. The sharp whistling sound that cut through the air suddenly stopped. It was Yan Chen who was quick-eyed and quick-handed. He stretched out his hands and grabbed the 2 magic whips directly. Boom. 2 orange-red flames suddenly appeared in the palm of his hand, and were directly transmitted from the long whip rope to Rios at the other end. Die for me. Bang. Caught off guard, Riohei turned into a torch and slowly burned up. Chapter 11. Puff. Leo Geis was completely ignited by the flames from the magic whip, turning into a blazing torch. The fire replaced the moonlight and illuminated the entire bedroom. Heart-wrenching screams could be heard from the flames. Help me. Impossible. What kind of flame is this? How can it burn me like this? Even though he was burning like this, Riohei was not willing to let Wang Chao go, and he ran after him. With a bang, the whole person flew at a faster speed and crashed into the fireplace wall. Ah! The violent collision made him feel uncomfortable, and he screamed in pain. With his burning hands, he still tried to cast magic. Dazzling magic sparks burst out, and a golden magic circle appeared faintly in the air. But at this time, there were 2 loud bangs. It was Yan Chen who picked up the magic whip he had taken away and whipped his wrist fiercely and accurately. A hideous bloodline instantly burst out from Leogess's wrist, and blood spurted out like a fountain. Ah, you, I want you to die. But before he could finish his words, the wind started to blow again. After a sharp whistle, the magic whip hit him directly in the face with a crisp snap. You beast. He wanted to say more, but the whistling sound came again. The long whip hit his other cheek again. It was more painful than killing him to be insulted like this. This made him unable to utter a single word, and he could only groan in pain from the flames. It seems that the physical fitness is indeed much stronger than that of ordinary humans. Yan Chen observed the human body struggling in the flames. After all, this is the fire of the phoenix, not an ordinary flame. Being able to survive in the phoenix flames for so long already shows that these magicians who guide the energy of heaven and earth have surpassed ordinary people in terms of physical fitness. This is indeed different from the wizards in his previous world. However, after a transformation of his soul and flesh and blood, he can still firmly suppress them. But no matter what, Kamaji's magic system that guides the energy of heaven and earth is still worth studying. Who calls himself a studious wizard? Yan Chen smiled slightly, looking at Rios, who kept rubbing on the ground trying to put out the flames, and said, "It's useless. Once this flame touches your body, it won't be easy to extinguish. Of course, if it weren't for torturing you, this phoenix fire would have completely devoured you." These devilish words immediately made Rios' scalp numb. Unable to bear the humiliation, he roared, but barely stood up and walked over tremblingly. But after a few steps, there was a crisp sound. The entire left leg that was supported by the whip shattered directly. The flames flowing on the body directly filled in from the wound and burned under the skin. "Kill me now, you idiot, kill me now." Riohei kept roaring. He hated his strong body, which he had always been proud of. If it weren't for this body, he would have been able to escape from the devil's clutches long ago. "Kill you, of course. When the dawn comes, that will be the day of your liberation." Yan Chen had just finished speaking when a spell of petrification fixed him in place, unable to move at all. It was dark at this time, and there was still some time before dawn. Yan Chen did not even look back, and was ready to leave with satisfaction. But at this time, something strange happened. An evil breath slowly floated out from Leo Jesse's burning body. A word that was completely different from Leo Jesse floated out. "Isn't it true that you can come and go as you please?" The voice was very unpleasant, just like gnawing on flesh and bones. As the voice drifted in the hut, the door that was open just now suddenly closed with a click. The violent breath filled with negative emotions such as evil, depravity, darkness, anger, etc., was like a shock wave that sprayed directly at Yan Chen. At this time, Yan Chen turned around after soothing the restless owl on his shoulder. With a calm expression, he slowly uttered a spell. "Expect God to guard." The obscure spell came out slowly from Yan Chen's mouth. A slowly floating silver gas spurted out from the end of the magic wand in his hand, like a stream of mercury pouring up and pouring completely into the air. This silver liquid quickly rolled and plasticized. Indistinctly, a huge phoenix shadow supported the entire void. Boom! This evil breath with all kinds of negative emotions suddenly collided with this silver phoenix shadow. Bang! All kinds of things in the wooden house were instantly destroyed because of the airflow emitted between the collisions. However, the roof of the house and the closed door were still tightly sealed and were not moved at all. As a result, the airflow in the hut continued to resound, like the sound of wind in the valley, making an endless roar. What kind of power is this? Riohei, who had just collapsed on the ground, stood up. Even the burning phoenix flames began to shrink and fade, revealing the charcoal black appearance underneath. The pupils of that terrifying and hideous human face were now covered with layers of unnatural purple smoke. The black pupils were replaced by purple crystals, which looked extremely strange and eerie. At this time, the reborn, Riohei, kept roaring and said angrily, "Mortal, this is... What kind of magic is this? It can block my power. This... Impossible." Looking at the silver phoenix shadow in front of him that was as solid as a rock, he was very shocked. Even with Dormammu's countless years of experience in the dark dimension, he couldn't tell what the power in front of him was. It actually blocked the invasion of his power. Blocked his evil erosion. Even if it was just a wisp of his divine thought, this terrifying energy was simply not something a mortal could resist. "Aren't you the Sorcerer Supreme? How could you possibly withstand my attack?" "Really, I'm sorry, I'm not a supreme wizard. I'm just an ordinary wizard," Yan Chen said lightly. His whole expression was a look of nostalgia. That past happiness. "This is the Patronus. The key to casting the spell is to do your best to recall something happy, so that it will work when you chant, Expecto Patronus. And then summon a Patronus. This Patronus is a positive force, and what it advocates is exactly what Dementors feed on: hope, happiness, and the desire to live. You can also think of it as the embodiment of positive emotions, the real projection of love. This has nothing to do with the energy of the world outside, it is just the spiritual excavation of human beings themselves, and it is projected. Of course, the reason why Dormammu was surprised by the power of it can also be regarded as the difference between the two magic systems. In Yan Chen's previous world, the focus was on the excavation of personal potential and personal willpower, while the magicians here are good at using things and rely on the energy of the world outside. Therefore, it is understandable that Dormammu was surprised by the power of it. This is not some kind of power. If it must be called power, perhaps it is the power of love. What? You're driving? What a joke. Dormammu's bone-grinding voice sounded again. How can a demon like you who is full of destruction and despair experience the happiness and love of humans? Yan Chen woke up from a series of happy memories. Among them were the touching moment when his parents held him up shortly after he was born. The joy of entering Hogwarts for the first time. The joy of winning the Quidditch World Cup with his teammates for the first time. The moment when he was awarded the Order of Merlin for the first time. And when Susan and I smiled at each other in silence, there were so many firsts. Ha! Yan Chen sighed. The Phoenix Guardian was still standing in the sky, completely isolating Dormammu's evil energy. It had the momentum of, no matter which direction the wind blows, I will remain unmoved. It's time to end it. He had a nostalgic look on his face, but suddenly he turned ruthless. A smile appeared on his face, and an extremely vicious curse slowly came out of his mouth. Avada Kedavra. A green light instantly spurted out from the end of the wand. The terrible death spell hit Leojes without any hindrance. Ah! A heart-wrenching sound of pain suddenly came out of his mouth. What is this? The pain of soul-tearing directly tortured the Lord of the Dark Dimension. If the previous spell was the most benevolent spell in the world, then this is the most unforgivable spell in the world. Yan Chen said slowly. As the spell was engraved deeper into the soul, Dormammu's soul was instantly torn into pieces. Bang! A wisp of black mist slowly floated out from Rio's body, and then the power gradually dissipated, and finally dissipated in the air. When your real body comes, I might frown, but you think you can win with just this wisp of divine consciousness. It's simply wishful thinking. Boom! When Dormammu's power completely dissipated, the whole forcibly closed door slowly opened with the breeze. Let's go, Kelly. Puff! Phoenix fireworks suddenly burst out on Rio's body again. After losing the possessed Dormammu's divine consciousness, Rios died completely, and thus lost the motivation to continue to torture him. So, the strange Phoenix fireworks rose up without wind, and suddenly devoured his body, leaving only wisps of floating blood mist dissipating in the air. At the same time, the swaying flames seemed unable to be retracted. It was completely ignited in this small house on the edge of the reef. The mature old wood fueled the fire, and the flames became more vigorous and overbearing. With a loud bang, most of the house collapsed completely. The scenery here is not bad. Yan Chen walked out of the room and stood on the rocks by the coast, watching the waves rise and fall quietly. The boundless dark water surface was like an abyss, which was even more fascinating than the scene just now. However, although I won easily just now, I must not be complacent. What I just did was probably only 1/10,000th of the strength of the Dark Dimension Lord. So with my current strength, Phoenix soul and dragon physique, if I really face the arrival of Dormammu's body, I can only run for my life. Is this the high-end power in this world? Yan Chen said silently. There was a glimmer of excitement in his eyes, and he was not worried at all. After all, the reason why he came to this world was to break through the shackles of himself. Now he has a glimpse of one of the top existences in the 9 heavens. It also allows him to see his future growth potential. It seems that we need to speed up the collection of Horcruxes. Yan Chen came to a conclusion directly. His soul was not complete. In the Thunder Tribulation, there were still 7 soul fragments scattered outside. This also helped him to create a set of Horcruxes like Voldemort, making himself immortal. But the risk of being scattered outside is too great. This feeling of not being in control does not make Yan Chen feel good. Of course, the soul fluctuations of the Horcrux are not easy to capture. So far, Yan Chen has only found 3 areas, and the third one was captured by Owl Kelly not long ago. Yan Chen, who decided to increase his strength, no longer held back, and could not ignore it just because the environment where the Horcruxes were stored was very safe. In this case, prepare to start collecting your own Horcruxes. That will definitely bring you a lot of room for improvement. Thinking of this, Yan Chen retracted his gaze facing the sea and prepared to get up and go home to rest. A dark wand slowly popped out from his sleeves. 13.5 inches, The wand core is a phoenix feather, and the whole body is made of an unknown material. Not only does it have the fierce masculine power of the oak wand, but it also has the characteristics of the birch wand to drive away evil spirits and the stability of the holly wand. It can be said to be a rare wand. Of course, as the famous saying goes, every wizard never chooses his wand by himself, but the wand chooses his master. When Yan Chen entered Ollivander's wand shop in Diagon Alley as a child, this wand that had been sealed for 100 years chose to follow him. In total, it has been with him for more than 9 years. 9 years. What an old friend. But I still need your company on the road ahead. Yan Chen wiped the magic wand in his hand. He recalled his past history of constantly making a name for himself with this magic wand. Perhaps, on the road ahead, he can continue to write the future with his own magic wand. As if sensing the master's emotion and expectation, the body of the magic wand seemed to understand human nature, and responded with a hint of floating luster. This may be the tacit understanding between the two old partners. Coo. The owl Kelly standing on her shoulder also kept flapping her wings. It seemed to remind her of her existence. Yan Chen couldn't help but smile at each other. Okay, let's go. As soon as the voice fell, the figure quickly disappeared from the spot. Crackle, crackle. The magic sound effect of the phantom development also burst out. At this time, the fire in the small house by the reef, which was still burning fiercely, suddenly subsided slowly, and only a few weak flames remained. As for the murder that just happened, there was no trace of its existence. In an extremely dim church, Casilios pursed his lips tightly, looking very ugly, sitting in the chief seat without saying a word. The Dormammu believers gathered around him, seeing this scene, were also silent, staring at each other. After a long time, he gradually woke up from his dazed face, and a pair of vicious pupils surrounded the believers around him. Just now, I have received instructions from the true god Dormammu. He ordered us to arrest this person no matter what. No matter life or death. This sinister remark was like a storm that swept through the mind, instantly causing a shudder in the hearts of everyone below. Of course, in the hearts of all the believers, they couldn't help but feel pity for the unlucky guy. Who is it? Who has offended Lord Dormammu's great will? A lackey mage said flatteringly. As a disciple who betrayed the Ancient One along with Casilios, Brent naturally had the honor and courage to ask this question. Suddenly, a flame emerged from Casilios' palm. A slightly childish and handsome face slowly emerged from the flame. It's him. His name is Yan Chen. Activate the Supreme Saint Killing Order. All believers, keep an eye out for this man. If you find me, get rid of me immediately. No matter if I live or die. Follow your instructions. High and excited words were continuously heard from the Dormammu believers below. Looking at those pairs of pupils full of religious fanaticism, Casilios nodded and said with praise, "Go find him for me now." As soon as the words fell, one space door after another opened. The believers in the church began to disappear one after another, ready to find out the guy who dared to offend the will of the evil god from this world. As if sensing some kind of intention, Yan Chen, who was in the bedroom, felt a slight itch in his nose and suddenly yawned. Who was thinking about him? Crack! The extremely sticky yolk and white turbid substance suddenly erupted from the eggshell in Yan Chen's hand. The rhythm was disrupted by this, and the egg in Yan Chen's hand, which was originally intact, suddenly broke again. This is already the 99th time. Yan Chen sighed helplessly. In order to adapt to his violent surge of strength, he needed some time and skills to slowly adapt and master his own strength. After a period of training, he was able to hold chopsticks, but of course, it was a bit difficult to master the balance of finer strength. For example, ordinary people can easily hold an egg in their hands. But now Yan Chen, whose strength has surged. But he seemed to have lost this light and agile way. So he chose to keep kneading the egg like this, slowly regaining the strength. That's not the point. Yan Chen touched his chin and fell into deep thought. When ordinary people yawn for no reason, they usually think that someone is thinking about them. This kind of metaphysics that seems to be unable to withstand scientific scrutiny is difficult to be recognized even in the wizarding world. But there is one exception, that is Hogwarts, where even the old headmaster Dumbledore and Professor McGonagall hate it. The professor of divination, Sybil Trelawney. As a slightly neurotic and unsociable person, if she didn't have the ability to predict accurately, to be honest, she would definitely not be liked by everyone. Of course, Yan Chen also held a trace of curiosity and learned a lot from her divination class. For example, the yawn he yawned just now was indeed caused by a thought that was worried about him. Moreover, it was a malicious thought. Interesting. Yan Chen was actually a little interested in this inexplicable malice. He couldn't help but think of the scene of his last divination. To be honest, even with his talent, he was still very immature in the very unpopular divination and prophecy. The accuracy of the guessed answers was only 30%. 30% probability of being right, 70% probability of being wrong. The slightly low hit rate also made Yan Chen seldom do divination. Because you don't know whether the result of divination is right or wrong, but you can be sure that it will bring you a lot of pressure. It will make you think of the hint in the riddle no matter what you do, so that you will. His mental pressure increased sharply. Therefore, for Yan Chen, who relied on his strength to crush everything, there was no need to increase his mental pressure so much. This may be the reason why Dumbledore slightly disliked divination. Because instead of thinking so much, it is better to get things done down to earth. But Yan Chen was in the mood. But he couldn't be stopped. On the table was a hazy crystal ball and a pair of slightly quaint and old tarot cards, which were given by the professor of divination personally. This also shows that this neurotic teacher likes Yan Chen, or affirms his talent for divination. Soon, after a set of rituals was completed, Yan Chen turned over the tarot cards on the table. Behind the fireworks and the extravagance. But it is a pair of black hands reaching out from the abyss. He silently said the riddle. But what he got was his own crisis. Behind the fireworks and the extravagance. But it is a pair of black hands reaching out from the abyss. Yan Chen looked up at the starry sky and murmured on the rooftop of a high-rise building. Although the deck of cards given by the divination professor is extremely simple, the meaning of the cards is enough to torment everyone who tries to divine. This is the disadvantage of divination. Although you don't know whether it is true or false, the meaning of the divination cards is like a thorn in your throat, and it is like a feather that makes people feel itchy and uncomfortable. What does the prophecy want to tell me? Yan Chen thought of this and couldn't help but sigh. If I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have been so eager to do divination and prophecy. Coo, coo, coo. Kelly, the owl flying in the sky, cried a few times in dissatisfaction. It was obvious that she was urging her master to. Okay, I know. Let's go now, Yan Chen said silently. He also put away all the random thoughts in his mind. After all, the main task now was to find one of his Horcruxes. Whoosh! Owl Kelly directly spread its bright and smooth wings and glided down from the sky at an extremely fast speed. With its keenness to Horcruxes, it quickly found the place where it captured the soul fluctuations last time. According to Kelly's report, it was still the easiest soul fragment to get. Crackle, crackle, the magic sound effect suddenly burst out. Yan Chen's figure instantly disappeared from the rooftop of the building several hundred meters away. Like a ghost, he arrived at the destination of this trip in an instant with the help of apparition. However, this factory destination surprised Yan Chen. It seems we came at the wrong time. Coo, coo, coo. The owl perched on the shoulder agreed. Ladies and gentlemen, you all know this person. This is New York's new superhero Kick-Ass, and the one next to him is our Big Daddy. A terrorist wearing a black hood pointed at the two superheroes tied to chairs behind him and talked to the national audience behind the live broadcast. Then he waved his hand and surrounded the burly and strong masked man next to him. Right now, Big Daddy and Kick-Ass are here to help us show you that being a superhero isn't such a good idea. Brass knuckles. Come, let's take a close-up. The brass knuckles, shining with a cold light, were firmly worn on a pair of sturdy and strong hands. Then he clenched his fists tightly and punched Kick-Ass hard in the face. Bang! A violent blow suddenly burst out. A stream of blood spurted out with his muffled groan. Even though the whole body was firmly fastened to the chair, it was still bent to one side like a broken doll under such gravity, which showed the strength of this punch. Ah, look what happened to my superhero. Next, a baseball bat. Give me another close-up shot. Then, viewers from all over the country saw from the live broadcast that the burly man holding a baseball bat in his hand inhumanely beat the two people. Bang, bang, the violent collision sounded one after another. The two bound superheroes had no power to fight back, and they were whipped by brass knuckles and baseball bats. Under this overwhelming attack, there was no intact skin on their bodies. The entire smooth ground was even filled with a thick layer of blood. Seeing this scene, the audience in front of the live broadcast couldn't help but sigh secretly. The spontaneous superheroes of the people were beaten like this. Who can save them? With such a despicable and shameless live execution, why don't those fools in the police station go and rescue people? Impossible, this kind of criminal can only rely on. Before they could finish expressing their feelings, the screen in front of them suddenly went black. Everyone in front of the TV looked at each other in surprise. Just now did you see a black robe flash by? I just want to talk to you. However, I seem to see a bird flying by. Of course, the strange black screen was filled with crackling gunshots, accompanied by heart-wrenching screams. The strange shouts puzzled every audience member who did not know the reason. After a violent explosion, sizzle, the entire screen was filled with a sound of disconnection. Inside the factory, a lazy voice came out. You guys are really making it hard for me to do this. We have no grudges against each other and have never interfered with each other, but what if you break my Horcrux? So I have to kill you. Yan Chen, wearing a black robe, walked in slowly. Under the pressure of the spell, the arrogant executioners just now lay on the ground dying. Their eyes were filled with despair, and they looked at the man who was coming with a look of shock. Demon. You devil, Frank won't let you go. Neither will Kim. Before he finished speaking, a flame suddenly rose from his mouth, and the terrible fire instantly engulfed him. In the live execution area, a nameless fire suddenly appeared, which ruthlessly devoured the executioner who was so arrogant just now. Careful, the old man who was beaten and seriously injured was wearing a bat skin. He pointed his finger at the back of Yan Chen and said with blood in his mouth, "Be careful. Die." A sturdy man wielding a baseball bat rushed over. Seeing the iron bat so close to his back of the head, the man could already imagine that this guy's head would soon spurt out a stream of red and white dirty stuff under the impact of gravity. It was a wonderful product of blood mixed with brain matter. Thinking of this, a trace of unnatural excitement flashed in the man's pupils. Hiss! A scorching flame suddenly appeared out of thin air. It ignited directly on the body of the sneak attacker. The terrifying high temperature even added a smell of ozone to the air, and the curling green smoke slowly floated up from his flesh and blood. Ah! Screams of fear continued to come from the firemen. Die! But it only brought Yan Chen's ruthless declaration. Then the word, die, burst out of his mouth, and this sound was like adding fuel to the fire, instantly making the flames spreading on the whole strong man burst into the sky. Bang! The baseball bat with only a small piece of burnt left fell directly to the ground, making a crisp cry. And a piece of flesh and blood weighing hundreds of kilograms, in the blink of an eye, turned into a light gray mist in the phoenix flame and scattered in the air. At this time, the guards outside suddenly realized it, and rushed in like spring water. Come on, come to me. Grab your pistols and shoot that monster together. Seeing the flames spreading on his body, the pupils of these guys shrank and there was fear on their faces. This was simply a demon that ran out of hell. They couldn't help but pull the trigger. Bang, bang, bang. Facing this group of lingering bullets, Yan Chen had countless ways to get away, so he was not afraid at all. Even though he had extraordinary self-healing blood in his body. But as a wizard who had experienced many wars, a layer of armor protection spell was cast on his body. I saw these bullets spraying, and they instantly made crackling sounds on the air wall built around Yan Chen, like rain hitting banana leaves. Although the only weakness of armor protection is that it cannot resist Avada Kedavra. But it is obvious that this group of muggles does not know this unforgivable curse. And it may not be so easy to use the gun in your hand to destroy this layer of space wall that Yan Chen has now opened. Click! The bullets in the pistol were instantly exhausted under the uncontrolled spray. Impossible. Seeing this guy motionless, the guards were like seeing a ghost. This was beyond their imagination. Even so, with trembling arms, they picked up the brand new magazine, trying to find comfort in it. In their hearts, they told themselves firmly that after this magazine was used up, they would definitely. The idea is very beautiful, but the reality is extremely cruel. All of them are frozen. An invisible wave of magic spread out. Moreover, under the silent spell, this strange attack method was even undetectable. All the people surrounding them were petrified. In the rigid petrified state, only their lively pupils showed that they were still alive. Yan Chen continued to wave his hand and said mercilessly, "Flying sand and rolling rocks." This spell was a range attack magic, sweeping across like a gust of wind, and directly blew away the group of guys who were fixed. With a bang, the individual, which was originally made of flesh and blood, was like a stone statue collapsing, and directly shattered into pieces of rubble. A faint lime powder filled the air. It covered Yan Chen's eyes full of interest, because he could sense it very clearly. The soul fragment that belonged to him was silently calling out to him. Yan Chen stretched out his right arm and whispered, "The Horcrux is coming." Flying spell, a spell that can easily summon things. With a tremor, the pendant hanging on the old man's body flew straight and landed directly in Yan Chen's palm. A familiar soul wave couldn't be stronger. Very good. This is the first recovered Horcrux. Yan Chen sighed. He was not surprised by the appearance of the Horcrux. After all, soul fragments can be stored in any object to form a Horcrux, and Voldemort's Horcrux even has a diary. So he would not be surprised to encounter his own paper Horcrux that day. Then, a gleam of brilliance flashed in Yan Chen's pupils, and the soul sea of consciousness merged with a tremor. And the pendant in his hand turned into powder and slowly dissipated after the soul dissipated. Ha! Yan Chenjing sighed. He could feel that his strength had risen to an unprecedented height. After absorbing the first soul fragment, the whole soul showed a slightly full and fused touch. After fusing the phoenix soul and dragon blood, Yan Chen's strength has been freed from the shackles of humans and turned into a humanoid magical creature. Both the strength of spells and the interval between spells are far better than the peak level of his previous life. After absorbing the first soul fragment, his personal strength has been improved again. Not only that, at the moment of soul fusion, the dragon bloodline lurking in his body was unexpectedly stimulated. Blue dragon, wind element affinity. A sense of enlightenment echoed in his heart. Yan Chen sighed inexplicably. This time, he actually stimulated the blood of a 5-color dragon. But it was not surprising. Compared with other rare species such as gem dragons, metal dragons, and ancestral dragons, the 5-color dragon is the most common dragon creature after all, so the dragon blood potion is basically mixed with these 5 different colors of dragon creatures, which can be said to have a lot of content. Therefore, Yan Chen was not too surprised to be able to successfully stimulate the blood of a 5-color dragon. Wind affinity. In the sealed factory, a buzzing sound suddenly came to mind, and small whirlwinds rose up from the flat ground. Buzzing. The wind gradually swelled, forming a storm that floated in the sky. The terrible scene stunned the big boss, who was still tied to the chair. This was simply a miracle. Suddenly, the wind speed increased, leaving a series of tracks in the air. The remaining flames scattered on the ground suddenly swayed violently. Fire borrows the wind. Wind helps the fire. Explode. Yan Chen shouted in a low voice. With a crisp bang, the storm burst like a balloon that had expanded to the top, and turned into countless winds that spread across the factory. With a crisp click, the light tubes in the entire factory burst in an instant. Even the entire factory space seemed unable to withstand the wind force, and the tightly closed doors and windows were directly open to the outside to vent the incomparable wind force. Not bad. Looking at the messy scene dotted with flames and the storm-like scene just now, Yan Chen nodded with certainty. But after all, this is the Green Dragon's wind element talent, so naturally it can't be wrong. Very good. The pendant on you has a favor with me. I am not an unreasonable wizard. I owe you a reward. Yan Chen said to the old man politely, like a well-educated gentleman. He waved the magic wand gently. Trauma recovery. Under the spell, the bruised body of the old man was restored to its original peak vitality. This, as a battle-hardened superhero, Big Daddy certainly knew how horrible the injuries were, but all the injuries healed with a wave of his little hand. Monster. It really opened my eyes. The old man, who was speechless for a long time, could only utter this sentence in a slightly shocked tone. Yan Chen asked again patiently, "Come to think of it, if you hadn't risked your life to protect the pendant in front of your master, I'm afraid this thing would have been completely shattered under the stick, so I solemnly thank you." Ah, Big Daddy had no idea what was going on, but he knew that the pendant around his neck was actually helping him. It's just an ordinary pendant. Of course, except for the blessing of some meaning. Big Daddy grinned, shook his arm and said, the reason why I subconsciously protected the pendant is because it was given to me by my late wife. Putting aside this meaning, it is just a worthless item. By the way, this is the amulet she gave me. I didn't expect it to come true. So I should be the one thanking you. Speaking of this, the pupils of the old man's resolute face turned red. There is such a touching story. Although Yan Chen is a wizard, his emotions are not so weak. Hearing this slightly sad story, he couldn't help but be moved. What a pity. If it hadn't been completely turned into powder, he could have perfectly restored the pendant. Doesn't this mean that you and I are destined to be together? Maybe it was really her in heaven who sent me here. Yan Chen said lightly. Of course, in fact, it was the Owl Kelly who guided him here. However, whether it was a fairy tale with love or a cold and ruthless reality, Yan Chen chose the former. After listening to it, the old man could no longer hold back his tears, and 2 tears flowed from his pupils. Thank you. I know it's just a coincidence. But I still have to thank you. Yan Chen nodded slightly. But he was still very patient waiting for his answer. Tell me, I owe you a reward. You can tell me the wish in your heart, and I will try my best to help you fulfill it. This is a promise from a top wizard. In the last world, only a few winners of the first-class Order of Merlin could be rewarded with. Yan Chen will fulfill a wish for you. This promise is not small. A reward. Big Daddy's face was somewhat moved. Looking at the slender figure standing under the black robe and cloak in front of him, thinking of his extraordinary and strange magic that shocked the world, he inexplicably felt a strong sense of conviction, as if there was nothing in this world that he couldn't do. In that case, I won't be polite. I have only one request, and that is to ask you to remove a drug lord, Frank Amick. Big Daddy took a deep breath and said this request solemnly. Ah, am I asking too much? Big Daddy said with a somewhat unconfident tone. After all, facing such a terrifying wizard, how could one feel the pressure? No, it's too mild. Yan Chen shook his head and said with a smile, it's my fault for not making it clear. For example, you can think more boldly. A magical elixir that can make people's wishes come true and everything goes smoothly. Or an elixir of life that can extend life. Or a drug that can make people stronger. Quote. Yan Chen specially selected several heavier potions and whispered them out slowly. The old man over there was shocked. He couldn't imagine that there was such a medicine. Wish come true. Immortality. Strong bones. These things were simply unimaginable. Such precious potions even made the old man have some thoughts. However, the old man still shook his head and said, these things are really precious. Maybe to you, Frank is nothing, but for us mortals, Frank, the drug lord, has killed countless innocent lives. So, every day I wish I could get rid of him. So that's it. Yan Chen could feel the hatred in his words and the sincerity of his true feelings, so he accepted his proposal with deep conviction. Okay, I've got it. Without further ado, I will go and fulfill your promise now. But, little girl, don't you know that the gun in your hand is very dangerous? Although Yan Chen did not turn around to see the girl behind him, the Phoenix Soul not only allowed him to see flies and mosquitoes 1,000 meters away, but also to have a clear understanding of the surrounding scene, so no one could sneak up quietly. The loli with short purple hair behind him was stunned. She didn't expect that she would be exposed, but looking at the messy scene around her and the pile of corpses lying on the ground, she couldn't help but said nervously, you are. Hit girl, put down your gun. This is my savior. Big Daddy also saw the figure coming in front of him, and couldn't help but said urgently. He was not afraid that his benefactor would be hurt, but he was very afraid for Hit Girl's life. Facing such a scary guy, it was not a gun that could give her enough security. Hearing Big Daddy's words, Hit Girl was stunned. However, she was obedient and put away the gun in her hand, just looking at the man in black with a vigilant face, guy with cape. So it's one of us. Then there's no misunderstanding. Yan Chen said with a smile. When the old man heard this, his throat, which had just been hanging, relaxed instantly, and he scolded angrily, look how scared I was. And how did you get here? Don't you know how dangerous it is? Why are you so nervous? And Dad, are you okay? I saw you on live TV and saw you being beaten like that, so I rushed over. Hit Girl then approached him and asked in a casual greeting. However, when she saw his red clothes, her pupils turned red and she said with a trembling voice, "Dad. Are you okay?" The old man stood up and puffed up his muscles and said, "Don't worry, I'm fine." Of course, this is all thanks to the magician in front of me. Afraid that she would not be convinced, he wiped the scabs and blood on the surface, revealing the smooth skin underneath. This Hit Girl inexplicably came back to her senses from her sadness and was stunned by the miraculous scene. She was clearly beaten all over during the live broadcast. How come she was better all of a sudden? Could it be? Was it the young man in the black robe behind who did it? Is this really what that guy did? That's right. If you don't believe me, he just waved his hand and made me recover perfectly. Big Daddy said with great emotion, and his hand made a showy move. But when Hit Girl turned around, she found that the guy standing behind her had disappeared. Disappeared right before his eyes. Big Daddy only heard a gust of wind, but also found that the benefactor in front of him had disappeared. His words, "I will fulfill your promise now," suddenly came to his mind. What a magical guy. Big Daddy looked at Kick-Ass who was beginning to recover next to him, and knew that he had not forgotten to heal him before leaving. However, Frank is finally in trouble. In a high-rise building in Manhattan, Drug Lord Frank looked at his subordinates who were not doing their job well with a gloomy face. Just now, he smashed a priceless crystal glass in anger, and the scattered glass pieces reflected a fascinating light. What exactly is going on? Why didn't anyone answer me? Are you all dumb? Frank, who was feared by New Yorkers, was not polite and directly put the cigar in his hand on their faces. The flame of the cigarette butt instantly made a sound on the face of one of the men, and a pungent smell of burning slowly drifted into the air. Even though he was being burned by such flames, the man still endured the pain and said, "Boss, they really didn't reply to my message. I wonder if they are still alive now." Before he finished speaking, Frank kicked him in the face, and with a bang, he fell to the ground. Bang, bang, another kick followed. Even though the man being beaten was an extremely strong man, he still didn't dare to fight back easily. It was not just that the man in front of him was the drug lord Frank. It was the man standing behind him, the capable subordinate sent by the underworld king Kingpin, Bullseye. Humph. Frank was a little discouraged when he saw that he was as defenseless as a dead man. Then, with a bang, he took out a pistol from his suit and smashed his head like a watermelon. What bad luck. Frank raised his blood-stained shoe and rubbed it against the clothes of another sturdy man. You can't even solve a superhero. Why should I keep you useless people? That's right. This is why Kingpin asked me to come. Bullseye on the side said. Listening to the interruption, Frank was not annoyed at all. Instead, he smiled and clapped his hands and praised, "With a foolproof killer like you here, I think the superheroes in New York should let out a wail." After all, he was just the person in charge of drugs under the underworld king Kingpin. But the one in front of him was Kingpin's ace killer, so he had no choice but to change his face and say flatteringly, "That's it. I will tear their bones one by one and use them as tools for picking teeth." Looking at Bullseye holding a shiny silver toothpick. After listening to it, Frank couldn't help but feel a chill in his spine. Even though he was bloody by nature, he couldn't help but feel a little fear of this terrifying and bloodthirsty guy. Let's finish this mission quickly. Boom. Suddenly, a loud riotous noise suddenly exploded outside the door. The iron metal door came as fast as a discus. Fortunately, Bullseye at the back was alert and jumped on his toes to easily avoid the incoming iron door, but the floor-to-ceiling window next to it was unfortunately affected. It shattered directly under the impact of the iron door with a click. Who is it? Frank looked at the attacker with anger on his face. The young boy in a black cloak walked into the house slowly and calmly. He knocked his head and tried his best to recall the memory of the soul reading just now, and said slowly, "If I'm not mistaken, this is the office of the drug lord Frank." He said this in a casual manner. But it made Frank furious. "He even tore down the door of my house. How can you find someone like this? You are here to kill me." Thinking of this, he kept stuffing ammunition into the revolver with both hands, while shouting, "Someone come to me quickly." Although the voice was loud, no one in the entire office building responded. If you listen carefully, you can still hear sobbing shouts. Yan Chen patted his head with his black-gloved hand and said apologetically, "It's all my fault. I didn't ask for the address and rushed here in a hurry. I couldn't find the way and accidentally killed all your men." He said this openly and his apology was very sincere. He actually asked for directions and killed all his men. They were fully armed killers with plenty of ammunition, but they were all dead. Frank couldn't help but spit out blood after hearing this. He pointed at him with a trembling finger and said, Who called you here? Who ordered you to do this? I will give you money. I have plenty of money. No matter how much he gives you, I will give you 100 times. He tried his best to suppress his panic tone, and said earnestly. But Yan Chen just smiled and said, "No need for 100 times, your head is enough." After that, he slowly raised the magic wand in his hand, and a faint light spurted out from the end of the wand. Cruciatus, the spell that can be compared with the unforgivable curse, finally emerged. Heart-piercing. Frank had no time to react and was hit by the curse. His whole body began to shake unnaturally, and the gun in his hand fell to the ground with a bang. The sound of tearing his heart and lungs continued to come out of his mouth. Ah, what is this? Frank felt as if his body was being eaten by poisonous insects. His skin became more and more itchy, and the itch penetrated deeper and deeper, as if it had taken root in his acupoints. The terrible pain made him want to die, and he cried out to the sky. The arrogant Frank just now was gone. But it was no wonder. People who were hit by the Cruciatus curse would feel piercing pain all over their body. The piercing pain would make the caster want to die. This curse was not used to kill people, but to torture people. Torture. Naturally, he wanted him to slowly suffer the pain of the worst evil in the world before he died. Quick, save me quickly. Bullseye, quick, kill him. Frank lay prone on the ground, one hand slowly reaching out to the alert Bullseye in front of him. Seeing his cowardly appearance, Bullseye walked away from him with disgust, and looked at Yan Chen in a black cloak with a pair of gloomy pupils, and said with interest. Do you know what I mean by Bullseye? That's because I have the property that any object I throw at random will hit the target every time. Yan Chen's eyes flashed with curiosity, and he looked at him with interest and said. So you are one of his gang. It can be considered as such. After all, it was sent by my boss Jin Bing, so you are out of luck, kid. While he was talking, a pair of hands showed no weakness and pulled out a series of darts and daggers from his clothes. The silver shining tools actually shone with a dazzling coldness under the light. Then it seems that you are doomed to die. After all, you are in the same group. Yan Chen shrugged helplessly, listening to his relaxed tone, as if he regarded himself as nothing. Bullseye's face suddenly turned fierce, and he said directly, Very good, I am no longer the same as before, and I will not be afraid of your bluffing magic at all. After the implantation of adamantium alloy, he gave him a lot of confidence. As soon as he finished speaking, the sharp blades in both hands were immediately sent out, making bursts of whistling sounds, and walked out of a straight trajectory, shooting towards Yan Chen in front of him. But at this time, on the ground between the two people, a series of wind catkins rose from the ground. Under the affinity of the wind element, the wind catkins slowly built up like building blocks, and actually formed a substantial wind wall to intercept Yan Chen in front of him. Bang bang. The sharp blades collided with the wind wall, and were actually blocked by the wall and bounced out, and could not get close to Yan Chen at all. What kind of trick is this? Bullseye looked like he had seen a ghost. He had never encountered such a scene in his career as a killer for so many years. He didn't see how he moved, but he created a wind wall out of thin air. Of course, this was not a wandless spell or a silent spell. Yan Chen didn't move because the attribute of wind element affinity was not a spell at all, but his own blood and talent. Just like eating and drinking, he could cast a spell successfully with just a thought. Looking at the wind wall in front of him, Yan Chen finally understood the concept of wind element affinity. So that's it. This not only makes him have a keen elemental affinity, but also allows him to command the wind element to build what he needs at will. Wind wall, wind blade, storm, etc. Of course it's a piece of cake. So that's it. He took back the joy in his heart. Yan Chen looked back at Bullseye in front of him and said to him with a smile, Bullseye, this name is really good. Bullseye didn't understand what he meant, but seeing him praising himself, he still said proudly, Of course. But, Yan Chen's tone suddenly changed. If you name yourself Bullseye because you never miss a shot, that would be a bit inappropriate. You should be named Sharpshooter. So in order to accurately define your name, I will treat you like a real bullseye. Fly away quickly. Just finished speaking. It's over. A warning flashed through Bullseye's mind, and his pupils were filled with fear. Bang! An exquisite wine bottle hit him directly on the forehead, and a large red and swollen bump instantly appeared at the contact point. Bang! The crystal fragments scattered on the ground all flew towards Bullseye, making several whooshing sounds, and directly pierced his body, and dozens of blood lines burst out at once. Bang! The quaint boss chair hit his waist directly. The gold-inlaid cigarette case hit his cheek. The photo frame clicked around his neck. There was a continuous rumbling sound. One big brick book after another kept hitting his body. At the same time, under the control of the spell, all the objects in the office were shot at Bullseye himself, as small as pens and paper, as large as bookshelves and stools, all flew towards him without surprise. And this was just a trick of Yan Chen. Fly here quickly was originally a spell to attract things, but he tampered with it and pointed the flying direction to the bullseye, and framed the objects into all the things in the house. So, there was this scene just now. How about it? Bullseye, now I feel that your name is right. Being hit by objects in the entire space. Bullseye felt severe pain all over his body, as if his limbs were detached from him. Even though he had an adamantium skeleton, his entire body was made of flesh and blood. Being hit by large objects such as bookshelves, tables and chairs repeatedly, even if he was made of steel, he would have to think twice. Hearing Yan Chen's mocking words, Bullseye would have fought back in the past, but his body responded with a wail, and he couldn't even lift a finger. At this time, you should be familiar with the name of Bullseye. Yan Chen smiled. With a wave of his arm, the bookshelf, table and chairs that were pressing on his body suddenly fell to the sides. Well, you can go back to hell and tell your name loudly. Nonsense. 8. Bullseye gritted his teeth in hatred and said angrily. He was called Bullseye because of his horrible throwing ability, not because he was a real target to be hit. But when he saw a magic wand slipping out of his sleeve, he felt cold and desperate. No, I won't die now, I have an adamantium skeleton. That was his most proud asset. With the help of the adamantium in his body, he had escaped danger countless times and was rescued from the hands of death. But this time, it was not his flesh and blood that was hit, but his fragile and vulnerable soul. Avada Kedavra. Yan Chen slowly uttered this spell, and a green light burst out from the end of the magic wand. Well, the target's eye, which was completely powerless, took the blow directly. Its pupils showed a sense of desolation, gradually turned pale and absent-minded, and then slowly lost the last bit of vitality. Suddenly, even a body as strong as a copper wall could not protect the fragile soul. Don't kill me, Frank said with a trembling voice, and his body was shaking like a live fish on the shore because of the Cruciatus curse. I have money, I have lots of money. What would you like? I can give you, please. Faced with a situation worse than death, Frank, the iron-blooded drug lord, still showed unprecedented humility. But it was like countless drug addicts asking him for a little bit of drugs, and he ruthlessly refused. Faced with such a request, Yan Chen just frowned and looked at him coldly. Even if he had never met him before, from some words in the evening, he could know that this guy had made many people lose their fortunes. So, he just whispered, soul reading. Frank's memory was immediately searched by him, and countless past fragments appeared in front of him like movie frames. In his soul that was fused with the soul of the phoenix, an important piece of information was quickly obtained from his mind. Then he raised his hand and annihilated the soul of Avada Kedavra. It directly ended his life as a drug lord. After death, Frank's face actually had a slight arc at the corner of his mouth, revealing a feeling of relief. That was because Cruciatus curse, which was listed as one of the unforgivable curses, was really a life worse than death. Every moment was like being in the torment of hellfire. Now, death was a complete relief. Is this what Big Daddy needs in return? Yan Chen looked at Frank lying dead on the ground, but he felt a little despised in his heart. This is too simple. He didn't want the magic potion, the bliss potion, the enhancement potion, and the elixir that he had carefully brewed, but just wanted this guy's life. This is too simple. Yan Chen even felt that this reward was too shabby. If the people in the wizarding world in the previous world knew that his gift was like this, it would be a joke. So, he had been prepared for a long time. Since many people mentioned the title of Kingpin, that is, what they called the boss, and the Underworld Emperor of New York, then he would take him as a gift to make up for the wait. After all, this gift was too small. It was not a question of whether Big Daddy needed it or not, but Yan Chen felt that it was a loss of face for himself. Okay, then let's go, Yan Chen said with a smile. He stretched out his hands, and the bodies lying on both sides of the ground instantly flew into his palms. So, he held one in each hand, and with the help of apparition, he went directly to the reliable address that Frank had searched in his mind. In a magnificent, luxurious and exquisitely decorated living room. A burst of crackling teleportation sound effects suddenly bloomed, and invisible winds slowly spread in the space. Bang, bang, the two bodies were thrown out in a graceful arc, and after landing, they rubbed a short length of blood on the ground, and fell directly in front of a person on the seat. Your delivery has arrived. Looking at the tall figure in front of him, Yan Chen recalled the memories in his mind and asked tentatively. You are? Jin asked. No, Jin. What was it? I forgot. But looking at the physique of the man in front of him, there was no doubt that it was correct. Forget it. No matter what your name is, you are already considered a bonus by me. I'm afraid you'll have to lend me your head. In the luxuriously decorated villa living room, there were many people sitting around the chief's seat. They were all the top big brothers in the New York gang. There was the boss who was in charge of Queens, New York. There was the mastermind who controlled the life and death of Manhattan. And the bosses of various administrative regions. Of course, there are also the big brothers in the smuggling of cargo ships at the docks. However, these ruthless bosses who are so powerful and have the final say all have a leader, the Underworld Emperor who sits at the top, Kingpin. They were holding a routine executive meeting. They were preparing to discuss how to redistribute the interests of the entire New York and how to divide the stolen money behind it. But suddenly, an unexpected person actually broke in here. Looking at the two figures that suddenly flew out of his hands, a boss in charge of the Manhattan City area couldn't help but exclaimed, pointing at the man on the ground and said, "Isn't this the #1 killer of Kingpin, Bullseye?" Although he was covered with bruises, the cross-star symbol on his forehead undoubtedly exposed his identity. On the other side, the gangster boss who was in charge of smuggling at the dock said with a trembling voice, "This is not Frank, who controls the drug trade." These two were both generals under Kingpin. But now, they have become corpses covered with wounds and blood. Could this guy have done all this? Everyone's eyes were immediately focused on the man who suddenly broke into the living room. Who was this? And this guy seemed to have appeared directly in front of everyone. Space teleportation. Who are you? How ridiculous. Is this the place you can suddenly come to? Many gangster bosses slammed the table and pointed at Yan Chen who was not far ahead, cursing aggressively. At this time, a group of figures came out of the spacious living room like a wave, instantly filling the entire living room and completely separating Yan Chen from the gangster bosses. After all, a gangster meeting is being held here. Every participant here may be wanted by the government with a reward of hundreds of millions of dollars. So the security force is naturally not weak. Just the security personnel in front of them, each of them is a top boxer of the underground black boxing, and there are many retired special forces. So, after these security forces came in, these gangster bosses immediately shouted and cursed with full confidence. Boy, why don't you speak? Don't think that you are great just because you have the ability to travel through space. There are hundreds of people with superpowers who have died in our hands. In their opinion, the person who broke in was a person with the ability to travel through space. And he was very likely a mutant. According to the single ability of mutants, this extraordinary guy in a cloak was most likely only capable of teleportation. Just a teleportation, humph. This made them feel much more at ease, and also made them curse even more angrily. Just as they were about to call the gunman to shoot and drive out the guy who broke in unexpectedly, a voice slowly came out. Young man, were you saying that you wanted to use me as a bonus, to lend me your head for use? The faint throat voice was low but very powerful. As the voice slowly echoed, the originally noisy and spacious living room suddenly became quiet. Even the gangsters who were angry just now held their breath, as if they were afraid of angering the figure sitting in the chief's seat. The atmosphere suddenly froze to the freezing point. It was as if a needle falling to the ground could make a crisp sound. Yan Chen, who was very patient, heard the reply from the main person at this time, and responded politely, "That's right." After hearing the accurate answer, Jin Bing slowly stood up from the throne. His huge body like a mountain gave people infinite pressure, making the originally quiet scene even more silent. The sound of swallowing saliva continued to be heard, and many people even couldn't suppress their fear and trembled their legs. This is the pressure that the underworld emperor Jin Bing brings to people. If New York belongs to the president during the day, then it belongs to him, Jin Bing, at night. No one can say anything about him, and no one can threaten him. His words are orders, and they are laws that must be enforced. Very good. Looking at the two corpses on the ground in front of him, Jin Bing smiled grimly and said, "Young man, you have succeeded in angering me. You killed two of my favorite generals. I'm afraid I can't let you off easily. Don't think that you can escape my pursuit just because of your spatial ability. You didn't come out of a rock, you have relatives. Even if I can't catch you, I will let those innocent relatives have a taste of my fist. And I will make them die without a burial place. The hand, come out." As soon as the words fell, a series of sneaky figures appeared in the shadows of the floor. "Kneel down now, young man. Otherwise, I will let your relatives and even friends die." Listening to this outrageous and terrifying declaration, even Yan Chen was somewhat moved. This kind of speech was even more arrogant and domineering than the Dark Lord. However, this guy actually threatened his relatives and friends. Speaking of which, in this world, only Susan can be considered as his relative. Because she is rare, so precious, and she cannot be insulted or blasphemed by others. A rage that could not be suppressed rose in Yan Chen's heart. He was completely out of control, but Yan Chen did not want to suppress it. Instead, he fueled the fire in his heart and spread it to his entire limbs. A red light also appeared in his clear pupils. Yan Chen said slowly, "From tonight after that, there will be no more Kingpin in New York. No more gangsters." Phoenix transformation. As soon as Yan Chen finished speaking, a sinister aura suddenly echoed in the sky. Everyone present could not help but change color when they heard it. This majestic and unparalleled pressure was far and desolate, and it was much stronger than the powerful and blood-stained Jin Bing. It was not much, but the difference between the clouds and the sky and the soil below. What's going on? The gangsters looked at him cautiously, but they were shocked. Yan Chen's body was emitting a hot red light, and soon his whole body turned into a ball of fire. The red light suddenly rose in the crystal. A huge flame shot up into the sky, and the loud sound of a phoenix burst out. Boom! The top of the ceiling, which was more than 3 meters high, was instantly shattered by the flames. Grass! What's going on? The gangsters around were so scared that they stood up, and many of them were shaking. A group of guards and bodyguards who were blocking in front began to retreat because of the high-temperature flames. Even the fearless Jin Bing looked a little ugly. At first, he thought this guy was just a simple space ability user, but looking at this figure turned into flames, he knew he was not that simple. "What are you still standing there for? Shoot me now." Hearing Jin Bing's words, the group of bodyguards who were constantly retreating suddenly woke up as if from a dream. They took out their pistols and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Bang! Bang! Flames came out from the muzzles of everyone's guns, and the whole scene was instantly filled with a thick smell of gunpowder. Bullets, carrying great kinetic energy, hit the focus in front of them one after another. Chi-chi-chi, violent burning sounds came one after another, like barbecue on a chopping board. The bullet itself had not yet completely touched Yan Chen, and it was instantly annihilated into ashes by the flames lingering around him. Bang! Bang! The gunmen, with a terrified look on their faces, pulled the trigger again, hoping to cause qualitative changes through quantitative changes. But along with these gunshots, the sound of flames burning the bullet body continued to be heard. Chi-chi-chi. The terrifying flame airflow was actually outside the body, forming an absolute defense. All physical attacks could not penetrate this layer of red light. At this time, it seemed that the gunshot completely angered Yan Chen, who was gradually turning into a phoenix. This was not just a transformation technique of the animagus, but also a combination of the phoenix soul fused with the soul, almost perfectly forming a real phoenix. Swish. The dazzling fiery red tail feathers instantly penetrated through the fire. Swish. The two phoenix wings shining with flames suddenly spread out, and the red feathers were clearly visible, lifelike. As the wings continued to flap, a fierce firestorm spread out instantly. Bang! The gunman who had been shooting continuously just now was the first to be blown to the ground by the fire fan, and rolled down and fell to the ground for nearly 10 meters. But the wind was not only fierce, but also had a terrible fire attribute. Every piece of skin swept by the storm was unexpectedly severely damaged, and even the suit on his body silently caught fire. Just the flapping of wings can be so powerful. Kingpin's pupils shrank slightly, and he looked at the phoenix monster that was helpless against bullets, and his heart suddenly skipped a beat. This is bad. It was as if the whole sky was collapsing. Jin Bing had already realized that his life was in danger. Looking at the monster that was beginning to unleash its power, he couldn't wait to leave. Boss Jin Bing, wait for us. In an instant, a group of gangsters were preparing to flee under the protection of the red ninjas of the hand. The bodyguards were tempted to move, but a cold and ruthless voice sounded. You stay here and stop them. If anyone dares to run, your family will be personally comforted by me. Although the beast in front of them was terrifying, Jin Bing's brutal image was deeply rooted in their hearts. The bodyguards gritted their teeth and actually wanted to rely on their numbers to kill him. Quickly bring the weapons over. The people behind were already holding rocket launchers, ready to use them to attack the phoenix that was constantly brewing in the living room. Just as they lifted the barrels, a loud phoenix cry broke out, and a huge flame soared into the sky, not only piercing the entire ceiling, but even like a wolf smoke penetrating the sky and cutting through the entire night sky. The entire living room was instantly like a hell of Shira, filled with terrible flames. The remaining personnel were instantly affected by the flames, and gradually disappeared under the phoenix flames like the missiles just now. A fiery red bird soared in the air, looking down coldly at the common people below, and its fiery red pupils also locked directly on the group of people who had not yet escaped from the villa. Who gave you the courage to leave? There is no more Kingpin in New York, no more gangsters. Do you think I said that for nothing? Phoenix actually spoke human words. People in the distance were all shocked. Besides, their hearts were even more depressed. A flame had already fluttered and shot towards them. With a loud bang, the terrible flames suddenly fell from the sky like meteors, crashing into the fleeing crowd in front of them. Bang! The terrible loud noise suddenly burst out. When the fireball landed, not only did it leave craters on the ground, but the terrifying shock wave even set off the nearby bodyguards. Go! Looking at the flames rising up in the sky, Jin Bing sobbed inwardly and ordered his men to escort him. Yes, the members of the hand responded in unison. This group of red-clothed ninjas are different from those black-clothed bodyguards. They are more loyal and sincere, and every assassination case is handled flawlessly. They can be said to be Kingpin's other right-hand man. When some people followed Kingpin to run to the gate of the Villa Manor, another group of red-clothed ninjas turned around without hesitation and killed them. But this is undoubtedly a suicide mission. Facing the phoenix beast that cannot be attacked by guns and bullets at all, the hand ninjas, who are famous for sneak attacks and assassinations, are also stretched to their limits, and the weapons in their hands cannot successfully shoot and kill. Swish, swish. The dart blade that cut through the air was instantly faster than a bullet, and it approached the phoenix in a blink of an eye. But a misty red light and heat flow is like an absolute defensive shield. Chi chi chi. The sharp blade made of steel still could not escape the fate of being corroded by the flames, and it suddenly turned into gray smoke and disappeared. Bang! At this time, a cannon shot out from the rocket barrel. The violent recoil even made the strong man fall to the ground. Swoosh! The more terrifying iron ball carried huge energy and aimed directly at the phoenix in the middle. All petrified, a cold word popped out. The iron ball in the air suddenly stopped its speed, and in the blink of an eye it fell to the ground like an iron ball. Swish! The feathers on the crown also took shape, and Yan Chen's whole body had perfectly turned into a phoenix beast. Facing the sudden artillery attack, the red fiery pupils just stared slightly, and the strong man who was carrying the cannon just now instantly ignited a terrifying flame. With a hiss, the terrible roar came from the flames, and the whole person's body suddenly melted like a candle. In just a few seconds, there was only a black mark and a small flame on the ground, and only a roasted smell floating in the air slowly floated up. This, indeed, legendary monster. A group of bodyguards sighed and began to flee. Just a gaze could set a person on fire. How could they resist such a magical power? Not to mention being stared at, just being near this beast, a strong pressure was already coming from the air. It was like being trapped in an ice cellar on the seabed, and the whole body from scalp to soles was instantly frozen. This was the momentum of the ancient beast. Mortals could not touch it. Even if he was the New York Emperor in the dark. Did I let you go? After a loud and high-pitched phoenix cry, a cannonball-like flame directly pulled down a long white tail flame in the air, and fell in front of the gate of the villa. Boom! The entire iron gate turned directly into a steel torrent under the flames, emitting a hot red light like magma. The entire outward passage was completely engulfed in flames. Looking at the hellish cremation scene blocked in front of his eyes, and outside the door were groups of waiting convoys. Jin Bing's heart was filled with despair. He looked back at the phoenix floating in the air in the distance and said, "Are you going to kill us all?" "That's right. Since I said I would lend you my head, this is no joke." Okay, he said, "Okay," 3 times in a row, and the exasperated Jin Bing looked crazy and shouted angrily, "Since you want to kill me, there is no reason for me to surrender. Hand of the hand, listen up. Black Sky is coming." The red-clothed ninjas around him shouted to the sky in unison, saying devoutly, "Black Sky is coming." Black Sky, what is this? The surrounding black bosses were immediately confused, and their eyes full of expectation looked up at the sky in the middle of the night, but there seemed to be no difference except for the sky full of stars. But at this time, voices shouted one after another from the vast manor. "Please invite Black Sky to come." This group of expressionless ninjas showed a rare crazy look. Even though their bodies were still burning in the flames, they shouted out the commands regardless of life and death. Yan Chen, who turned into a phoenix, also looked up at the sky at this time and exclaimed, "This world can really surprise me." Suddenly, under the prayers of the entire hand-to-hand ninja, a desolate breath fell from the sky and turned into a terrifying breath like a stream of water pouring into the body of the Jin soldier. Ah! Jin Bing let out a heart-wrenching cry. His huge body began to rise higher and higher, and his bones underneath made a sound like frying beans, and his muscles were so knotted that they tore the clothes on his body. In a short while, he turned into a terrifying beast. Roar! So this is what we call power. Jin Bing roared, and after the power of the Black Sky took up residence in his body, he had turned into a giant beast over 3 meters tall, with a pair of terrifying horns on his head pointing straight to the sky. "Welcome Black Sky," the ninjas of the hand shouted in unison with crazy faces. The gangster bosses and bodyguards beside them lost their minds in an instant, and started to fight each other like zombies. This is the terrifying aura of Black Sky. It can spread the terrifying violent gene to the outside world. Every time someone uses violence, he will become more powerful, and his darkness will spread further until the whole world turns into a scorched earth. Only by actively becoming a slave of Black Sky can you survive here. And the ninjas of the hand are waiting for this moment. Their mission is to guide Black Sky, or the beast, to descend from the sky. The reason why they obeyed Kingpin's orders was just because they were chosen by them as Black Sky's container. Now, at the moment when Kingpin was on the verge of death, finally he accepted this power. But this power was so huge and terrifying that it instantly drove away Kingpin's soul consciousness, and was gradually occupied by Black Sky's consciousness. In the Shadow Realm comics, Daredevil possessed by Black Sky was simply invincible. Even the Avengers and superheroes were no match for him. Even Wolverine and Ghost Rider were defeated with just one move. It can be seen how powerful Black Sky is. And the terrifying aura it spreads will make more and more people lose their minds, which will also make his power stronger and stronger. In other words, his power is endlessly growing. Looking at the beast in front of him, the leader of the hand smiled foolishly and said, "Black Sky is an ancient evil beast, and his naked power is incredibly powerful. It is no less powerful than monsters like the Hulk. Its terrifying skin is extremely hard and can not only resist pistol shells, but even conventional missiles can hardly cause damage to it. It is also immune to ice and fire shocks. The body is filled with the destructive energy accumulated over tens of thousands of years. With one breath, it can cause hundreds of casualties. Such a monster is no match for mortals. Even the Hulk may not be able to withstand it for many seconds. Even for a monster like you, it's hard. Really. Yan Chen, who had transformed into a phoenix, interrupted directly, and then after a loud phoenix cry, the entire phoenix body fell from the sky like a comet. Whoosh! Jin Bing, who had turned into a black sky, roared and tried to intercept with his two strong arms. But with a whoosh, the phoenix's two huge and gorgeous flaming feathers slapped fiercely, and at the moment of landing, it actually suppressed the falling momentum. A violent storm wrapped in flames rushed straight towards Jin Bing. Indistinctly, there were even bursts of sword sounds that kept ringing. Roar! Jin Bing's hands grabbed nothing, but there was nothing he could do to prevent the raging wind. In the blink of an eye, it had covered his entire body. At this moment, the terrifying sound of the sword kept ringing in his ears. Puff, puff, puff. A series of extremely exaggerated blood marks instantly appeared on He Kong's body surface, and the opponent's skin was bleeding as if it was split by an invisible sword. In the blink of an eye, the entire huge body was chopped into a bloody giant covered with wounds. And that's not all. The phoenix, which was in a dominant position, took advantage of Jin Bing's distraction and dropped its two ferocious claws from the air, reaching down and grabbing Jin Bing's head. At this moment, a terrifying phoenix flame kept coming out of its body, like a clear spring pouring down, directly pouring on Jin Bing's entire huge body like mercury. Chi chi chi. The entire huge body instantly ignited like a torch, and heart-wrenching sounds of pain continued to come out of the flames, and a smell of burnt cooked meat also spread out. The entire gigantic body was actually melting like a candle, which meant that his flesh and blood were constantly evaporating and dissipating under the high temperature. In less than a few seconds, the mighty Jin Bing lost his struggle in an instant, and even his limbs that were still dancing with joy instantly lost their vitality. Boom! The phoenix feathers spread out and flew into the air, and the claws loosened. The entire black sky Jin Bing suddenly lost his support and fell to the ground with a plop. There was even a red flame from his facial features. The so-called black sky was knocked down so easily. The leader of the hand stopped talking abruptly. The terrifying defense he claimed just now was now a joke. He was chopped to pieces in the first encounter. Is this what you call being invulnerable to ice and fire? Yan Chen said sarcastically. You're weird. A move of God's shadowless hidden under the storm. With the blessing of the phoenix body, the whole spell was strengthened tenfold, so it completely broke the defense with one move. Under the continuous coverage of the phoenix flame, He Kong's so-called invulnerability to ice and fire became a joke. Looking at the deathly pale leader of the hand and his slow words, Yan Chen stared directly and lit his body out of thin air. After He Kong's power completely dissipated, the terrifying violent aura also dissipated. The guys who had just killed each other suddenly woke up and instantly regained their spiritual wisdom. But when he woke up from the fantasy, he faced a more cruel reality. A group of phoenix flames that made people feel evil actually flew in the air, completely covering the entire manor. Not a single gang member can be missing. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.